Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Hotline League. It's a great episode because we are finally, after a drought of active League of Legends stuff to talk about, especially in the form of games. We've got games starting in just a short time with MSI. It's going to be 1 a.m. my time at about, 5 hours, 6 hours, I think is how that works. We'll see FlyQuest versus PSG Talon kick off MSI as it officially starts. But I'm really excited because we have broadened our horizons for this week's episode, and we've done what we've done many times before, which is ask a person in Europe to wake up at 4 a.m. their time to do a show in the middle of the night. What time is it?
10 past 4. So
10 past 4, yes, exactly. So we'll introduce our guest here in a second, but first, let me introduce my co-host for the evening. It's none other than Cubby. Cubby, how's it going?
I'm great. Shout out to Travis. I gave him a heart attack when I checked my flight information midweek and was like, oh crap, I'm flying back on Tuesday and not Monday. So we strategically put this episode 5 hours before MSI starts just for you. It's like the run of the MSI.
Yes. I had plans tonight, but I was able to move things around. It actually worked out kind of nice for me last night. So yeah,
that's great.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. But no, I had a great trip. My mom turned 60, so I have a sister. We got the family out all in one place, and she was very happy about that. So it was a nice break for me. But I'm excited to get back into some league as well. I have this ridiculous schedule where I was up at 4 o'clock Pacific, and I will be staying up till the game's end, which will be over 24 hours awake. So
you're doing it.
I'm doing it. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to I have to wait 24 hours to VOD review. So I can't VOD review before the games on Thursday, but I can VOD review after that. Because Riot has a rule where you can't do content within 24 hours of it showing, which is fine.
Yeah.
But so I'm excited for game to start up again. And yeah, excited to have you with us, Nymaera. I'm doing the marathon. We haven't
formally introduced our guest yet, Cubby.
Yeah.
You're spoiling.
Not yet?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Everybody who read the title of this and saw the thumbnail and listened to the podcast are going to be.
I'm still getting the hang of this co-host thing.
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
You're fine.
Yeah,
sorry, you were saying. You were saying.
No, I have nothing else. I'm boring besides that. Okay. I played golf at the same. I played golf at the same place that the SEC championship was going on at.
Nice.
And I compared. I was on a different course, but I compared my score to theirs and got very sad. So that's the only other interesting thing I have going on. So anyway.
That's why I don't play Summoner's Rift anymore. You watch too much pro league, and then you go on the Rift, and then you just look like an idiot, and you feel bad.
If you eliminate 5 holes in my 18-hole round, I played the rest of the course even. That's what matters.
Fantastic.
So,
Great.
Half the time it works, all the time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
All right. And for, I think, the first time ever on Hotline League. Have you been on Hotline League in the past?
Not been on before.
First time ever, we have Nymaera, who is joining us. Where in the world are you joining us from, Nymaera?
Well, I live in Berlin. Don't let the accent fool you. I'm here, so I'm in Central Europe time, where it is very dark outside, and I'm trying to be a little quiet because I've got my brother next door sleeping. But
ooh, okay,
we'll see about that.
Yes. Well, I appreciate you coming on. We wanted to, and we often try to do this, especially for folks who haven't watched Hotline League in a while. Is we try to do something for these broader international events where we broaden out beyond our normal LCS cohort to bring folks on, and so give us a bit more of an international perspective for international events. So we're really excited to have you here. Actually, on that note, because this is a show that's primarily focused on the LCS, and this is your first time on the show, do you want to give a little bit of a rundown on what you do currently in the league scene and what your path was to getting there?
Oh god, that could take a while, but sure, why not? We can go for that. Currently,
maybe a mini version, an abridged version.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I'm currently an LPL caster. I've been casting LPL for the last year and a half now. I started last year. I'm started by doing a load of amateur and unofficial and university league broadcasts within partly within Europe, but also I guess probably the thing which got me onto the radar the most was doing an unofficial LJL broadcast, which was Japanese League of Legends. So I've got a lot of ties within the minor region scene. I did some kind of guest work onto the Vietnamese scene as well, in terms of the VCS unofficial broadcast as well. There are some really good kind of thriving minor region communities which I've been a part of with that. And just by doing, hundreds of games over a couple of years and breaking my back trying to get somewhere onto the ladder. Climbed up, got onto NLC, which is one of the ERLs in Europe. From there, I went on to EMEA Masters, and then also did a fair amount of shows on the LEC as well. So that was mainly within 2022 at this point. God, it feels like a long time ago now. Then the year after that, got onto LPL and modeled my way over to here.
Yeah, well, great to have you on the show. Looking forward to hearing your takes, because Cubby does a good job of staying up with all the international stuff during the LCS split, but I'll watch some, you watch the T1 games, you watch some of the exciting LEC stuff, and then if maybe I'll try to catch some LPL here or there, but for the most part, I am fairly focused on the LCS. So it's always really fun for me when we do episodes like this. Actually, I miss doing Rift Reaction with Emily Rand, in part because she did such a good job of helping me prepare for international events and giving me all the storylines for that. So this is where I get to cheat and just listen to you two and our callers all argue about stuff while sharing my limited knowledge and perspectives. For instance, really excited to see Team Liquid and their current play style go up against some of these teams that we're going to be talking about tonight. But for those that are watching this, I guess after it's been posted to VOD or podcast, unless you're a member of the YouTube and you watch it right away whenever it goes up the night before, you will have already, unfortunately, we'll be talking about some games that have happened in the past, because tonight in the US, we'll have FlyQuest and PSG Talon playing, then T1 and Astral Esports going up against each other. Then the 24 hours later, I should say, we'll have Fnatic and GAM, and then Top and Loud. So this is our entrance into plans. I will say, I do want to do our normal show and tell segments, because I've got stuff to talk about at the beginning of the show. Ooh. But just as a quick aside, I will say MSI really creeped up on me. I feel like Riot did not do much to promote it.
Travis, I already have a take pulled for that.
Okay, great.
Yes. Yeah, because I agree. It kind of jumped up on us, Yeah. They've got some weird slogans going on. If I'm gonna get really nitpicky, but yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't know. MSI is always such an awkward event, and while I'm excited about the games, I gotta say it's a little confusing. I think it's also a struggle for me, because this is Oh, by the way, I've mentioned this on previous Hotline leagues and stuff, folks, but you'll notice I am not in China. I will not be going to Chengdu. This is unfortunately the first time in my career, if you don't count COVID, I guess, where everybody was covering remote, where I will not be on site for, I've gone to every LCS finals, I've gone to every MSI All-Stars.
I met you last MSI, in fact.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I looked at our chat and saw that was when we'd last spoken. But every Worlds and stuff, I won't be going. Last year for Worlds, I didn't have a sponsor for that event, and I just flew myself over. This year I will, I'm hopefully going to have a sponsor for Worlds, but if I don't, I'm going to save money for that and budget for that and go do that. And I think MSI was, unfortunately, the thing that was the easiest to skip on a list of things that are tough to skip. So I'll be remote. I will be staying up tonight to watch at least FlyQuest PSG Talon, and we'll see if I can keep my eyes awake if it goes to 3 games. But I'll be riding along with all of the rest of you who are watching remotely.
So much like League, Travis, you've cut budget. I understand.
Yes, exactly.
Right, sorry.
Esports winners hitting all of us.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, let's do quick show and tell, because we already talked about what we've been up to. We were chatting a little bit before the start of the show, and Nymaera, you said you've been playing Mass Effect in some games during the break.
Yeah, because I knew I wasn't going to be on MSI, and I had LPL finals, and I thought, well, what am I going to do with my time?
Yeah.
So basically, my partner hasn't played through a load of the games, which I found very important to me when I was growing up. So basically, as a way for us to spend time together, I've been playing through those games kind of like with us kind of communally. So we've played through Combat Evolved from Halo Combat Evolved, Halo 2, ODST, 3, Reach, and then we've done Mass Effect 1, and we're just about to finish Mass Effect 2 as well. So
yeah.
I've been reliving like a lot of my sci-fi shooters from when I was growing up. It's been really good, honestly. Like, I've played through a lot of these games multiple times, of course, but a lot of them I haven't played for 10 years now, maybe, in some cases. And looking back at that kind of perspective of games which meant a lot to me, and then seeing if they've changed, and if so, how, that's been good. It's been really good. I've been enjoying it a lot.
That's super cool. Whenever Mass Effect Legendary Edition came out 2 years ago around this time, I played it. I have a computer set up right next to me over here for like editing and for guests and stuff. And then I've got my main PC, and my partner at the time and I both played through Legendary Edition side by side, and it was so fun to like compare and contrast like the decisions we were making in the game. And
did you romance Garrus as God intended?
She did. I did not. I think
one of you has sense.
I think I did not romance anybody. I had Trainer in Mass Effect 3 is who I romanced. So, but yeah, it was good times. So I've been really enjoying that. I've played the first 10 minutes of Stellar Blade, so that's been what I've been excited about. I finished. Yeah, I know all the controversy, but I think it's just a well-reviewed game. And then I finished Fallout recently. I finished New Vegas a couple weeks ago, but I finished the show last week and really liked it. I got to say, I know, Cubby, you said you're 2 episodes out from the finale.
It's been really fun.
Yeah.
Like, I just like had a group chat of friends from back home for me ask if they should watch it today. And it almost like feels corny saying it's a loyal adaptation to like the world, but it really like it really is like it really kind of encapsulates the fun of it, which is what I really appreciate. And like, you don't have to be a fan of Fallout to enjoy it, because I only played New Vegas and I don't even know if I completed New Vegas.
I just wish that Halo had got a series, you know. It would have been great if Halo had a TV series. I'm really glad that people love Halo so much that there could be a series, but there's never been a series. It'd be great if there was a series.
No, dude, the opposite of what they did with Halo is what happened with Fallout.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's funny because someone brought up Assassin's Creed movie, like talking about Fallout in the chat as well.
I actually didn't mind the Assassin's Creed movie, you know.
Michael Fassbender.
That's a bold
tried
take.
his best.
I watched it on a plane, and it was not worth the plane, I think.
It's like not even delicious trash. It's just trash, you know?
Yeah.
I didn't mind it. Oh,
yeah,
tell you what,
I know like in the promos.
The weirdest movie I ever watched on a plane was an Alien movie, by the way. I watched Alien Covenant, and someone got ill, and someone said, "Is there a doctor on board?" As we were on flight, as like alien stuff was happening, and then they asked me to move seats, and I've never been more off-put in a flight in my life because of a movie. That's the worst flight movie experience I've ever had.
Rough.
Oh man.
Yeah, no, I highly recommend people go watch it because I think
it's good.
They just crushed it. I really like the ending. I think it's super satisfying, and really excited about season 2 because of some stuff that they teased that I will not go into. The other fun thing I did today was I went to, for longtime channel viewers, they might remember Mark Zimmerman and I had a Genshin Impact channel. I don't play Genshin anymore. But there is a Genshin Impact pop-up in Santa Monica at the Santa Monica Mall down on 3rd Street near the pier. And I bought some stuff. I bought Jean, who was always my favorite character. I bought an acrylic of her, which is kind of fun to pop up. I think I have
Jean C1 random rolls.
They did these like gacha pulls where if you participated in events, you could pull these like nice little thick cards that had characters on them, and so these are pretty fun. I'm gonna send a couple to some friends. So, but yeah, it was good old times going back to the Genshin Impact pop up. I know League's pop ups are like the World Championships and shit, but I do really wish that they did pop ups because I know that there's like I feel like a lot of Asian IPs and games and stuff like that do a lot of fun little pop-ups in different cities, and I don't see as much of that from like Western studios or Western IPs, and so I'm hoping that
we had the Arcane pop-ups briefly, right? There was the stores in a couple of different places, which then got vandalized overnight. But that's the closest we've got, I think.
Oh yeah, the ones that Jinx.
There was one in Oxford Circus in London, which I missed out on by a day, and then it got obviously vandalized by Powder. But yeah, there've been some okay ones. It's just not been like consistent, and it's quite hard to build hype around things which don't have a precedent as much, unless it's like really, really good.
Somewhat related, I went to my first ever like gachapon store because I was trying to roll this bear in a chair, is what I was calling it, like from like this campsite thing. I don't know, it looked adorable. I wanted it on my desk, and they switched out the machines. So like I spotted it on a Friday, and I Venmo'd my girlfriend to like roll a couple for me to see if she could get it, and then we went back and it was gone. And it was doomed.
Oh, hang on. Have you seen the League gacha thing? In fact, because my brother got one. Have you seen like the League gacha things? They've got the classic statue things. Anyway, it's not Ari in these, sadly to me. But yeah, they're starting to roll them out. Medic posted something on his Instagram.
Yeah.
And obviously they've got
You got
like
tagged.
yeah, they've got like Ari on the box, and then obviously that's incentivizing me to spend money amongst all people. But sadly I rolled Teemo, so I'll guess I'll update you guys on whether I win the gacha there for my Ari statue there.
Yeah. All right, we got to start talking about League and taking calls, because otherwise people scream at us when we talk about too much random stuff in the beginning. But a couple different things. So one, yeah, I mean, what I just want to hear from both of you before we get into calls. Like, what are you most excited for? What are you most looking forward to with this event this year?
Ooh. I honestly, I think like everyone's gonna have a favorite or like someone that like they think can win. But I think this is a crazy competitive tournament going in, especially like between the 4 teams like the Eastern regions are sending, because obviously they're gonna be the favorites. Like between them, like I can see a world where 3 out of the 4 teams win and possibly 4 out of 4. And I think that should make for a really exciting tournament. Like a lot of people would be like, oh, like this region is like better than the other. I don't give a shit. I actually think like it's going to be a really fun tournament. I think any team coming in, like especially out of those 4, can win. And I'm curious, like I think that the Western teams have a chance to crack top 4 as well. So I actually think it's going to be
yeah.
yeah. I think it's going to be that the 3 out of 4 was definitely IFTES is like the questionable 4th, but they're still really good, right? So I think it's going to be a really fun tournament. Like that's what I'm excited about. Also, this tournament is an absolute sprint. Like this thing from start to finish, I think there's like 1 or 2 days off. It's ridiculous.
That's always how MSI is, though. It's
yeah.
It used to be like, and they started doing that with Worlds too, where they realized they needed to start saving money, and so they just started compressing the schedule a ton. And like, I will admit, there are. I wish I was in Chengdu. If I had a sponsor, I would definitely be there. There are a couple of reasons why I am okay with doing this stuff remotely this year, and one of the reasons is that it is so exhausting to travel to another country, and then like just have so little time off. You just go. It's such a grind. And so but I agree. It is a sprint. It is wild. How about you, Nymaera? What are you thinking for this event?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bit of a rock paper scissors for me between the top 3 teams. Like, I think when you've got like T1, BLG, GenG, I think each of them have a slightly favorable matchup versus one of them, but a slightly unfavorable matchup versus the other. So we could have like a really interesting dynamic of actually each of them trying to tool up to beat maybe their negative matchup, but then also make advantage of the one which maybe they're favored in a little bit as well. That's for me on paper anyway. So yeah, that means it is really wide open. I think that there have been some pretty big meta changes coming into the event, which could flip everything. Of course, we saw even last Worlds, the meta changed because the teams just started playing different stuff halfway through because of how T1 played it. And when you have teams that are already so close, I love seeing how they just kind of like theory craft their way through an event. And particularly with the format, the way that MSI does right now as well. I really love seeing this format. I'd love to see a continuation of it. Yeah, no, I'm excited to see kind of how teams kind of tool up for the big matches ahead of them.
Yeah. I mentioned it earlier at the start, but for me personally, I am really excited to see our North American teams go and compete. Obviously that's the case for me every year, but in this year in particular, I'm just really excited to see both FlyQuest, but especially Team Liquid with the way they were playing in the start of the very, very interesting situation happening on Cubby's stream right now for the viewers. But but yeah, with the way the Team Liquid started playing in playoffs and sort of the aggressive style that they exhibited and carried through the whole playoffs, I just want to see if they maintain that. I mean, I do worry because we've sent North American teams that had quote unquote aggressive play styles to international events before, and then they get into boot camp and they just start like, I don't know, softening up, maybe is the best way of thinking about it. You're like, what happened to you during this boot camp that now you're all playing super scared and just rolling over and dying? So we'll see, but I'm optimistic. In terms of expectations and performance, I have no fucking clue. I mean, like, MSI is always, everybody loves to talk about MSI predictions, and I think that makes a lot of sense because that's the content people get excited about. But like MSI in particular, I find to be really difficult because it's such a long time after Worlds, and there's so little data
benchmarks in the same way.
Yeah, it's just like it's really difficult. So I am pretty pumped about.
So, fun
Just
thing about
seeing
the
North
tier list
America.
as well, I actually think the two most interesting discussions are the ones about teams which maybe people don't focus on as much. Because I think PSG are a really interesting team. I think that not many people have watched PCS compared to, the four major regions. Though, obviously,
Yeah.
I mean, the major regions are a huge time sink to kind of cover all of them. And I actually think there's an interesting discussion between, like, Astral and Loud as well in regards to which of those kind of minor region teams is coming in hotter. Not that they get to face each other this event, unless they both make it through planes, which is... That'll be once in a blue moon, definitely. But yeah, it just means that a lot of the tier lists just kind of end up talking about exactly the same stuff because you've got like pretty much the same brackets being talked about in the same ways.
Yeah. I think it's super exciting to see how all these folks come together, and I think that's a pretty good point. I had another really great point that I was going to make, and then I just got completely distracted by Twitch chat screaming at you about pitting PSG over Fly.
Okay, look, we can talk about it.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it.
We've got callers.
I can
I'll
see
keep
a
my
world
powder
where that
dry on that one.
happens. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you can.
I'm on Fly, but it's not out of question.
Oh, I know what I was
We
going
can
to say.
talk about
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get a chance to watch too much content before this event, but I did watch Double-If's tier list, and I've heard that that's a pretty good one to look at in particular. So I feel like I'm pretty well informed after seeing his.
Please.
All right. Anyway, Cubby, do you want to do a quick spiel for just in case we have any international viewers?
Honestly, we've got some great takes already. I'm kind of excited. We got some good ones lined up. But if you want to have your take in the Discord and have the potential to call on in, go to discord.gg/Travis or in the chat, command Discord with the exclamation mark. You can @ me in the Discord once you get in. @ me with your take. If it's good, I'll put you in a waiting room, and then we'll go pull you. I've got 4 or 5 pulled already. We've had some really good ones, actually. And I'm excited. I mean, anything MSI related is great. And I will say that, like, the 2 regions I'm probably strongest on are LCS and LCK. I had to be prepped in LEC later on in the split because I'm on the podcast The Jungle as well. But I know Nymaera specializes in that and LPL, so I actually feel like we're pretty well covered here. So I'm kind of excited to see how we can get into it.
Pretty read up on LCS. I did a lot of LCK VOD reviews as well. And also LCS, because just in terms of time zones for me, I kind of like, LCS is very casual watching for me. Like, I'll sit in Discord and I'll watch it with friends. I've really been enjoying that this year, actually. So I've caught a fair amount of LCS, even if I haven't had like full brain power active.
Yeah, it's a very little time commitment to keep up with LCS these days.
It is
true. Comparative. Yeah, comparative.
I caught LPL playoffs, but like not the regular season. So I'm gonna default to that. Yeah,
dude, like I cast an extra 60 games just on my own channel out of the ones I didn't broadcast for LPL.
No, you guys were doing
absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, you and Alex are going crazy.
Yeah.
Sam, you mean? I'm Alex.
Oh, Sam's.
Yeah.
Who are they?
Thanks.
Yeah. What's their? I don't know.
Who are these guys? Yeah. Who's this
exactly.
guy?
It's a 4. I'm sorry. All right.
It's okay. Cubby, it's very late where he is, or where Cubby is, so I understand why he would struggle. Yeah. All right.
This is when I hop out and get a caller.
Yeah. Go grab a caller. Meanwhile, I do want to give some shout outs to folks who are supporting over here. I saw Bug Juice Reviews became a member. Thank you so much, Bug Juice Reviews over on YouTube. Kyle Crosby with the $10 super chat. And then over on Twitch, we have Joe Goat Ba, Spring Powered, gifted 5 subs. That's very generous of you. Apple Thief, Milk Boy, Bjornson, Shadow Demon 42, Emil Kill 42, Avura. I think I got some of those earlier. Hustbust, Hobnobbin, Stizzleswick, Boba Cola with 80 months. Holy moly.
Jeez.
Danny Grimm and Gerg, thank you all for the subs and the support. We got our first caller of the evening here. Caller, what is your name and where are you calling from?
How's it going? eBraum from Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Fort Lauderdale, Florida. What do you want to talk about on the show?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having Nymaera on the show. It's good to talk with him again.
Long time no see.
How's it going, buddy?
It's going good.
But yeah, mostly you kind of mentioned on it a little bit. It was kind of the second part of my take, but this is going to be the first international tournament without an LGL team. I know you did a lot of work with LJL, and now you were talking about PSG and how they're going to be coming in. So I just wanted to see if you have any thoughts about how the LGL has come through and how PSG is looking at the start of the tournament.
Okay, first context here. eBraum used to help me and Sam and the others on LGL when we did our unofficial broadcast. So it's first off, dude, when was the last time we talked? Ages ago.
We talked at 4 a.m. my time last time, so because I would wake up very, very weird times, just like you're doing right now. So I appreciate it.
Okay, so the question was about how LGL is it the current state of LGL or how they're developing. I kind of got lost in the source a bit there because it's 4 a.m. for me.
Yeah, and more like at how it ties with PSG, their run. How do you feel about them this year? You're saying that they're going to be FlyQuest this tonight, so I want to see what you think about that matchup.
Yeah, and
yeah.
and really quickly, Nymaera, can you give context for the folks who haven't sort of followed what happened with LGL? So, because I think a lot of people might not understand what's happening here.
So, this is the first event in 10 years, I think it's since 2014, that there will be no Japanese team at a League of Legends international event. Because the LGL has been folded into the PCS playoffs, and there is only one seed from the PCS playoffs. That means that there are currently 3 regions in PCS, which is Oceania, you have Japan, and then you've got a PCS as well, PCS proper. Just so happened there was PSG making out of this one, but they were faced against a Japanese team in the finals, who were the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks. So it's not even Detonation Focus Me that made it that far as well. The finals was not close. And for those of you that don't know about the Hawks team, because again they didn't make it into internationals, absolutely no, I'm not gonna slam people for not knowing this team. But Ebby went back to that team after having a stint in the LEC. Obviously, he was very famous for his time in Detonation Focus Me. It was a 3-0 finals. Earlier in the playoffs, though, we did see that the Hawks took down Frank Esports, who were the #1 PCS seed in playoffs. PSG weren't even the first seed in the playoffs. And then they also went to 5 games against PSG as well earlier in the bracket. So it's been a bittersweet year to be a Japanese League of Legends fan, which I have been for a good number of years at this point. And I think if you followed minor regions or you quite like tuning into play-ins, I think teams like Detonation Focus Me and like the Japanese representatives have been a mainstay, and a lot of people have followed them. I think it is good to see that even though LGL is not going to be at internationals, they are still putting together good rosters. I think going 5 games against PSG in a PCS playoffs bracket, which looked pretty stacked. Yeah, it's been good to see them competitive, but like there is still that tinge of like bitterness for me, being like, well, why don't we just have another seed for PCS if they got 3 regions involved in there?
Yeah. All right. So now that we have the context, I mean, generally speaking, you referenced this a little bit at the start here when we were talking about things that we're excited about, but overall, why pit PSG above FlyQuest? Why be so excited about this team? Sell us on this PSG hype train.
Okay, so PSG have an incredibly individually stacked roster in a lot of ways, particularly on the top side of the map. You had Maple. I know that Maple's had some, patchy history now at this point, but this guy's been playing internationally since God knows when. He was back. Was he Gamania Bears back in 2013 even? He's been playing for a long ass time. He's one of the Flash Wolves, which had some great international performances, and then he's kind of plied his trade on multiple regions now. He's gone back to PSG, which was there for a while, and he's alongside GenG in the jungle, who was he was the EDG substitute jungler in 2021, who was wrecking solo queue. And then he kind of ended up kind of stepping out from the shadow there to go to find a starting role elsewhere, and he found that on PSG Talon. And as a mid jungle, they are really, really good at making plays. I think particularly combined with Aja as well, their top laner, I think they are 3 very, very strong individual players from the early game. But then also, once they get themselves just that slight front foot forward, they're very, very good at kind of continually making plays and then kind of accelerating the game forwards. Now, that's the good part. Now, bot lane, it's not necessarily going to be the hyper carry roles and stuff. I think that Betty and Woody have been fine. They'll turn up towards team fights a little bit later, but they're not really the focus of the team. What they're trying to do is try and be stable and allow these kind of players on top side to do really, really well. Warning signs against PSG in terms of the champions, which can really, really threaten, I think, even good teams at this tournament are. Aja is one of the best Udyr players in the world. I think he is a great Rumble player as well, which are 2 very different archetypes of champions, so it's not like they're locked into a single composition. But particularly, I think the big warning sign is, does Maple have a champion he can engage and flank on? So that's typically stuff like the Nico. If he gets Nico, game's going to be difficult, because he will always find some way to find a big engage around your big team fights in the game. And I think that's going to be a worry, particularly if they hit the ground running, which is a bit of a dice roll as well. PSG are not great at adapting to new metas. If it is similar enough from playoffs, I'm pretty happy for them. But if it's a big change, we'll see. But if they stick towards the kind of the flanking champions for Maple, and other teams are not good at shutting them down early, and they're maybe a bit lackadaisical around their dragon setups, and they allow a little bit of vision control to slip so he gets into the backline, this team is really, really punishing in team fights. They're a great team fighting team, and I think if you give them individual advantages, they are very, very good at playing through them as well. So yeah, I think PSG... part of the reason why on another tier list I was kind of sat there thinking, well, I kind of want to put them over FlyQuest just to kind of put the point out there. I think it's close between these two teams as they face up today, but they have the talent, and they definitely have some roads to success. Now, the question is whether FlyQuest have kind of like done their homework. I actually think that PSG would have a better chance against Fnatic. I think if they'd been on Fnatic's side of the bracket, I would have been a lot more confident of their chances of success, particularly because Oscarinen, I think, is struggling on an individual level, and I think that allows Aja into the game, which is very dangerous. I think Whippo is very, very good in the early levels of the game, or at least he has been historically. If he does that here against that, maybe Aja is kind of his teeth are pulled out a little bit, but yeah, I think PSG on the whole, I'm really looking forward to see how this top side performs against MSI talent.
So you think FlyQuest is stronger than Fnatic, is what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I do. Actually, on that level, I do.
Hey.
I think that... Now, I do think the peak of Fnatic is higher than the peak of FlyQuest, just because Humanoid and Razork are incredibly good players.
Yeah.
And I think that Razork at peak is up there with the best player in the West. Yeah, I think he is the best jungler in the West at peak. But the question is, do you get everyone at peak at the same time before you have a loss condition like Oscarinen on the form he's currently been on, losing the game? But I think on an average baseline level, yeah, I'd take FlyQuest over Fnatic, yeah.
Yeah. This is a fun little aside.
I do think that, like, for PSG, the big thing for me is, like, I think their path to win would be if Maple can play fast, like, against Jensen. I think that could favor PSG. For me, I think that FlyQuest top side is their strength as well. And
yeah,
FlyQuest,
really fun.
We're also the best team fighting team out of LCS. So I'm curious to see what kind of form they're in. Because, like, I think that if FlyQuest win the final, there would have been a much different narrative about them coming into MSI.
Dude, 100%. Yeah, like, I was literally just thinking that same thing where I just don't know what to think about FlyQuest. Like, that finals was so rough that I think it really shook a lot of people's faith in them.
Wait until I introduce you to a team called Top Esports later, but go on.
Well, yeah. The other thing I'm, like, really interested to see, too, with FlyQuest is how much Masu and Busio improved throughout this, like, boot camp going international. Because I have a lot of faith in those kids. I mean, they come from challengers, so I've seen a lot of their tape.
They're your
overall.
kids, yeah.
Yeah, they have a lot of talent. And I hope that they learn fast. I thought that Masu actually might have been the best performer that they had in finals. So I'm actually really hopeful that Busio scaled up. Busio had a tough final, but he was also first team All-Pro in regular season, and I have a lot of faith in those guys. So
see, it's funny. I feel like the things that you're excited for are the things I'm nervous for, right? Because you're like, what could boot camp have done to these people? And I'm like, oh god, what could boot camp have done to these people? You know, like it's we've seen a lot of rookies go to these events and just get like shit on, and then they start to go, oh no.
They don't lane well, but they do other things very well.
That's a problem, man.
Yeah, it is a problem
this tournament.
But
I think it won't be a problem in
better?
play-in. I don't think it'll be a problem. But, like, consider the level of bot lanes in laning. I mean, okay, I think in play-ins you can get away with it. Like, Eddie and Woody,
they're fine against PSG.
I actually think
Woody's kind of bad.
It's like PSG FlyQuest is not going to be about bot lane laning phase unless things really fall apart. And there's every chance of that. I mean, any person who's debuting international, especially if you're debuting international, playing in a foreign country which you've never played in before, so you're getting used to jet lag and just a lot of different things. There's a lot of the small things which actually matter when you're going abroad to go play. Stuff like the food can be different, just the weather. A lot of that can get under your skin. But yeah, I think like when you look at the top tier teams, it is going to be an absolute wrecking ball down in bot lane if you're not really hitting it every shot in laning phase.
Well, but you did mention that PSG has a weaker bot lane, so like I guess maybe we'll ease them in. I'm not going to call it a mirror matchup because they do play in different ways, but it's kind of like a lot of their strengths are nucleated in the same roles, right?
It's on mid because like the PSG, like Maple and GenG want to play really fast, and FlyQuest want to kind of control things and get to later. So that I think that's like where the big difference in style comes, and that's why I'm interested in the mid lane matchup.
Yeah. Well, there we go.
And also, if FlyQuest also like do that kind of like lax, if they do their Safari kind of dragon setup where they're like, I'm gonna watch you take the dragon, and I'm not going to do anything about the dragon, that will get punished. So
Yeah.
see that.
Caller, I hope we've done a good job of diving into this matchup. I think, and thank you for teeing it up for us, because obviously we wanted to make sure we had a call about the first matchup that we're going to be seeing in a short time. But anything else that you wanted to ask or follow up on here?
Yeah, anything for you, Travis. But also, we kind of touched up on it. The whole Fnatic thing. It feels like, just really quickly, LEC just feels like they have zero confidence coming into this tournament. I know they have a solid G2, but it feels like LEC is just so scared.
Do we have an
about
LEC
what's
take,
happened.
Cubby? I want to make sure we're not sneaking into
No,
another direction.
not yet.
Okay.
But yeah,
I can hold off on if you have something, but
No,
it's
no,
more
let's-
about
we-
Fnatic. Like,
Yeah, go ahead, and since we were talking about Fnatic, go ahead.
yeah, like how does like a European league watcher like come in and expect Fnatic to do? Because I've been seeing some really bad takes about like how Fnatic's been playing.
Right. Yeah, that's got a lot of levels to it because yeah, I think it's quite clearly in LEC you have G2 and then the rest. You had G2 in finals of LEC giving up an easy Nexus kill to secure a pentakill in finals. Like, I should tell you the mentality of G2. They were on Chinese sleeping time, but during LEC finals. Like, they were not necessarily even focused on the LEC finals themselves. That should show you kind of like, I suppose, their mentality towards. I mean, they'd already qualified for MSI, of course. So like there is something towards that as well. But so you kind of have to separate in some ways at like the G2 side of things and then the Fnatic side too. I think LEC has had a lot of teams who have had quite spiky identities coming through this year. I think that you have teams like BDS who were they didn't really know how to play side lanes. They played through Adam's champion pool to make sure they didn't really have to understand to play through side lanes. They just need to know how to play Darius or Olaf, which is a completely different kind of equation. And then they play the game a little bit differently. I think with Fnatic, they have to play heavily through mid jungle because that's where their star power kind of playmaking is too. And I think particularly since Oscar fell off, they've lost a lot of their own side laning kind of performance as well. However, even though with even through that, which is understandably a lot of negativity, there are some real nuggets of real goodness coming in from Fnatic as well. There was a game or two which Fnatic really pushed even G2 earlier in the year where they showed really good understanding of vision control, where I think one thing which became very apparent with particularly games involving G2 and then some of the other teams that kind of like matched up well into them was once you have made a big play, the logical kind of thing which happens next is someone has dropped wards during that play, either as part of the fight or as a setup towards that fight. So then if you move over those wards again, there's every chance that another play can happen. We saw that some of the younger teams in LEC, like Mad Koi, they really struggled with this, where they just walked straight into another trap because they didn't quite respect what had happened after the first big play. It's like the domino effect, right? And G2 have been good at this for years. They'll set up a big play after the big play. Fnatic could actually contest at that. So I think at peak, when we see actually some very good high-level game understanding in terms of, wow, we can make a second play off of the big play, and we can punish even teams like G2 at that point too. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see how they can play through that. You really, really need to see Oscar and step up, though. I think for play-ins, I think Nora and Jun are going to be fine. I think Jun's actually been playing really well on an individual level. So bot lane, I don't think it's going to be like a loss condition. I think Oscar might actually be a loss condition, though, particularly against the quality of tops in this tournament. Even though the meta is not about top lane carries, you just can't bleed out that much pressure and gold through that kind of side of the map to players like Zeus, Bin, or 369, or whoever, realistically. I mean, that's just not a way you play the game. So my realistic feeling is Fnatic particularly come in with a lot of versatility in terms of like variability, rather, in terms of their low lows are, wow, they have a loss condition in top side and their bot lane's not exactly star players compared to the rest of the top players. That could be really bad for them. But on the top end of things, really good specific high level game knowledge, and they have some of the best players in role in the West in Humanoid and Razork on form that they can actually take over a game versus even very good teams. Yeah, I could see them taking a game off of a top esports or a team that drops the ball against them. So I think Fnatic are probably the most variable team in this tournament. I think I could see them losing to a great amount of teams. I think they could get really caught off guard, but I think they could snipe some important games too. Which is why you get a lot of this kind of like negativity around them.
Yeah. Well, and I think I honestly like when we have a team like that in the tournament, because I think it adds a lot more variability, especially in a world where we've moved from a best of one predominantly format. So I think I think that should be pretty fun. So I'm looking forward to it. Hey, thanks so much, caller, for calling in, though. Anything you want to shout out here at the end?
No, just shout out to you guys. Thank you very much, Nymaera, for waking up and joining in. And
Thanks, man.
always great to hear you guys talk.
Yeah, thanks. Have a good one.
Thank you.
All right. I think we are up to our next caller. If Cubby wants to go grab him. I will say viewership a little lower tonight because I think we're doing it on a Tuesday and people didn't realize we were doing it. But I do want to thank everybody who's showing up. And once again, YouTube crushing Twitch, both in viewership. I shouldn't say crushing, but it's beating Twitch in viewership and also I think in support. We just had Jeremy with the $10 super chat. Thank you so much. Over on Twitch, we got some subs from Gerg, Papayor for 42 months, Notorious Bubble, Mac to Ace, Danny Grimm, Ben Jean, PP Doc, and Chicken Frog. Thank you all for the subs. We got our next caller here. It's none other than Yasukeh. Have you ever called in before? Caller? Yasukeh?
Hello. Yeah, I just had to deal with my mute button.
No, you're good. Have you called in before?
I'm always like a little bit late to the timings.
Yeah.
Of sort of, all of the guests are already sort of set up of the callers. But yeah, this is the first time on. Happy to be
welcome.
here.
Yeah, I've seen you in chat obviously a lot and all that stuff. So it's good to see you. Where are you calling from?
Calling from a beautiful day in Phoenix, Arizona.
Phoenix, Arizona. Ooh. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So the talent announcement of the MSI, it does not have a lot of talent on the list. It's particularly low, and especially it doesn't have a lot of LPL talent.
Oh, I think that's fine. There's literally no LPL talent I can think of that I would want on that list.
Now, while there's people like Emily Rand who do watch all of the major regions and especially like just get really in depth into the games, it's a different level from watching the games versus watching the games for the purposes of being a professional broadcaster with them. When you are doing the professional broadcasting, you're going to be looking into all of the narratives. You're going to be really in touch with the community sentiment because you have to take those extra steps to level up your game as a broadcast skill. And there's a little bit of a worry with there being with LPL being such a major region that it will probably be a very big focal point of this tournament. Not having people who have the really in-depth knowledge of, watching BLG versus UP, like there's probably not going to be a lot of people who have watched that. Whereas a lot of the LPL talent has. So it'd be great if we had more LPL talent on the MSI broadcast.
So, Nymaera, how on the spot does this pitch you? Because I think this is an interesting situation, right? Where nobody who doesn't make it to the cast wants to be seen as like the complainer for not making it on there, but also, you're able to do the show because you aren't in China right now, which I'm sure is probably where, much like myself, you'd rather be. So, I guess before we even get into it, how do you navigate conversations like this?
Well, I mean, I think you have to take it from kind of like a personal level, and during those kind of conversations, I think the golden rule is just don't put other people down, because that's where things kind of get into like the real negativity side of things, and that's never really how you want to be viewed. So, on a personal level, yeah, I'm upset I'm not at MSI. I feel like I've had pretty good year and a half on LPL, and I understand that there's a lot of very talented people out there. But yeah, I think there is a difference between being a generic good broadcaster and then having this specific relationship with a team, a set of players, or a region, which allows you to have the anecdotal experiences and the kind of the community sentiment to kind of bring with it. And at the end of the day, I think the crew at MSI are incredibly talented. They're an incredibly talented bunch of people, and they will deliver a great broadcast. I do think, though, that there is a point where I think of people like particularly Lyric and Munch, who have been on the LPL for a very long time, who have just years of experience. And I put myself on the list as someone who's worked very hard to get that kind of knowledge. Which, I think we would bring a lot to a broadcast like that. Of course, we can't now because we're not out there. But Yeah.
And
There's a lot of nuances to it.
And one other thing about in other sort of talent announcements, there's always the sort of issue of, oh, if you want somebody else in the broadcast, you have to take somebody else off of it. But like in CS, there's 20 spots for a major, but there's only and there's 40 talent. So there's going to be a lot of people who are left off. But with this MSI talent announcement, there's definitely more room for people that you don't have to have the argument of, oh, I would rather take Nymaera over insert X person. Like, you don't need to do that. And that's where I see a lot of the negativity coming in these sort of talent
I
announcement
suppose you have to,
discussions.
if you consider like flying people out to China, putting them up in a hotel, and then also and stuff like that, there are costs for bringing more people over, which I'm sure do factor into the equation somewhat. But yeah, I think particularly when you've got, I mean, we already talked about the format being accelerated a lot, right? A lot of games in a very short amount of time. Then I think that does get to a point where you're then looking at kind of like, you will get a better broadcast by adding more people because people are just so less exhausted at that point too. I wonder if that's not that I've worked these events, but that's something which I've heard from some people that have worked them.
I mean, I know that obviously like this is an LPL question. Nymaera is on the LPL and like would be considered given that he covers major regions. Like even like just as a caster, like the way that you navigate this is like, I mean, it's never like a self-advocating, but it is like, hey, like let's look at the scenarios. And this is something like a lot of fans have brought up. Like, I mean, the LPL is the top like region in the world. The LCK hasn't won MSI since 2017. Like it's been mostly LPL teams that have won it since then. So like to not have someone that was covering that region this split, like yeah, that does feel kind of weird. And obviously, like I mean, the team there, as Nymaera said, is great. You have a lot of time to prep in this downtime, right? And there are a lot of people on the team who have covered LPL.
I've played through like
before.
6 full games right now in my spare time.
Yeah. There are like a lot of people like who have covered the LPL before, like Raz, Emily, Hysterix, Dagda, like to name a few, right? I'm sure I'm even missing a couple from there. But there is also like something for like living the split, right? Like I think that everyone gets a unique feel from like living through a split, like Atlas and Chronicler, like they're going to be able to cover the ups and downs of T1 and GenG better than like anyone else, right? Like I can't do that even like with LCK is probably the region that I watch the second most outside of the 2 NA ones that I feel responsible for. Like I can't cover it the way that they would, even if I'm going back through the tape and watching it, right? Like you just don't get the same emotional pull. Not to mention like their case is unique, but they're also in Law Park. Like if I talk to them, they might be like, oh yeah, I interacted with XY player, XY coach. Like I was a part of that broadcast team, right? Like Wolf did a great job. Like he would put in the chat like, hey, I talked to this coach. And sometimes it was like, hey, this player's not feeling well, so we're going to take it easier on him today. Like that wasn't disclosed, like it was something behind the scenes where it's like, it's that. Or like he's like, hey, like this coach dropped to me this pick, so if we see it, I want to talk about that, right? Like that's unique stuff that you get from actually covering that region as a whole. So I mean, yeah, like there are ways to advocate for this, like without going about like I should be there, like you know, me over X. Like that's never what it comes down to, right? It's like how can we make sure that this region gets covered the best way, right? And so having people that have lived the split, I think there's always value to that.
Nymaera, where's sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, there's a specific example for LPL in regards to this too, in regards to, I think LPL on the whole ended up slowing down 3.5 minutes per game on average. Like, that's a huge, like, glacial fall off in terms of game speed. And, you know, I have now seen the development of, particularly the changes to Grubs away from the Heralds from last year, of how different teams have adapted just as like the whole patchwork of a region as the whole in terms of, well, how has the LPL changed to the map and towards Heralds? And Top Esports and BLG had two very different ways of doing that. BLG were actually very good at using the changing map, whereas actually it's been Top Esports later into the split that have used these different objectives to like pull people across the map and then kind of like accelerate the game through kind of pulling people into a trap around objectives, which has been really big for them. And that's something which is really hard to get unless you've seen like the progression of all the teams trying to figure out the way of how to deal with Grubs and how to deal with the new map.
I was going to ask, where are all of the LPL talent located these days? Obviously, you're in Berlin, but...
I'm in Berlin. Munch is in the UK. Lyric is in US. Mazal is in the US. And that's the 4 like main LPL casters. Yeah. And then there's Trouble, who guested on and then did a lot of the desk work. She also lives in Berlin. She also does LEC as well, which is also, you know, like where the LEC talent are. Ginny came in to do the hosting. She was on. She's in Berlin as well. Jamada did some guesting as well. He's in the UK, and that's. Oh, and there's Hysterics as well. He also lives in Berlin as well. He guested back onto the LPL a bit. So we're kind of split between EU and NA right now. And when we're in studio, we do it from the remote broadcast studio in Dublin. So we get flown into Dublin, not towards China. So that's like where the LPL is geographically for the English broadcast.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's interesting because I know from what I understand, the Riot has mostly moved away from the concept of, hey, we're going to have all of the talent on site all the time at specific events. And I believe that they are doing it, they're having people on site in China this year because of some changes that are happening at the LEC studio or something. I don't know what the details were. I remember that was what was for World, so I don't know what the details are here. But all this to say is that in the past, and very frequently, they have moved to this model of, oh, we're going to have everybody cast out of the Berlin studio, and they've done that multiple times in the past. And so I'm not suggesting that like it makes sense that folks aren't there, because obviously it's like just pony up the money to get them over there so that you can have people on site. But I would be very worried if this trend continues in a place where so many of you are in Berlin or in EU. It would be very strange if you're in the same city where a lot of this stuff is happening and they're just like really not bringing folks on.
And it's like, if there is a reason why we're not being brought in at that point, like, be clear about it. So if there's something we can fix, or if there's an impasse or whatever, let us know,
Oh, you guys don't get that feedback, you're saying?
No, not really.
Yeah. That follows with what I've heard from other talent in the past, is that sort of the decisions just sort of come down from on high, and then there's not much of an explanation of the way it goes. And so
the only thing, I've never been in this position, but the only thing that I know, like from what I've heard, is that because scheduling is done so far in advance, like your summer split can help you more for MSI, and your spring split can help more for Worlds in a way. But yeah, it's a black box.
Particularly when visas are involved. Yeah. So for instance, if you need to get to China, like the visas for China are a long time in processing.
That was part of the reason it was difficult for me to, like, I knew a while ago I wasn't going to go because it takes so long to get that stuff going. You have to call it out way ahead of time. So yeah, it's tough. But I mean, obviously everything that everybody's already said is what I feel is it would have been great to have LPL folks more integrated in the broadcast. And this is not the first time this has happened. I mean, there's been repeated times where I've pulled LPL folks onto Hotline League in part because I'm sad that they don't have a presence there.
So it's a difficult situation, right? Because, the LPL broadcast, and for those of you that kind of missed the context on LPL broadcast, like LPL English was gone, like after Summer Split last year, it was gone. It wasn't like they just changed hands or whatever. No, it was genuinely gone, and people had to scramble to pick it up again. And like, I think the team which has picked it up in the remote broadcast studio has like been really, really like put under a lot of pressure, and I think they've done pretty well given the amount of resources that they had. But for this year, yeah, we have been, and particularly we got, even the LPL kind of folks in the back end got hit by layoffs as well. We even had even less resources than we were expecting for that too. So just as an overall broadcast, yeah, it has been rough in regards to the resources. And then if you think, your quality of broadcast then gives you a better chance of being invited to internationals, I can completely understand that affecting that too. So, am I upset that, that there's no LPL cast at MSI? Yes, and I hope that we get a chance in the future, and I hope that we're deserving of that chance in the future. But, like, if this stuff weighs into it, like, I am somewhat understanding of it, to that extent anyway.
Medic in the chat says, just to refute that, visas took less than a week from application to approval this time.
Oh, really? Okay,
My understanding, so if I wanted to go to China, one of the things that I need is an invitation to go over there as a member of the media. Obviously, it might be different for the caster side, but like that was something I needed to get by the beginning of April, because because I think it's also a process of that stuff has to be there. There are processes on the company side, because I think you get an invite from like Tencent or Riot or something like that.
Yeah, that
I submit. And because of the time that it takes for that to go through whatever channels it needs to go through over in China, that delays the process. So I don't know. I know that let's just put it this way. I could right now go buy a ticket and be in Berlin in 24 hours. That is not the way it works, at least for me, going to China. So there's definitely some times that are a little different. So. But yeah, caller, thank you so much for calling in. Anything you want to add on here at the end?
Yeah, so I would say that there are lovely places to listen to LPL talent on podcasts such as this, which I highly recommend if you're some talent to really kind of squeeze that knowledge from Nymaera. Also, you could, I would imagine that Nymaera would be perfectly willing if anybody reached out to him to kind of dissect his brain and that kind of stuff, so that even
You're
if he's not
volunteering
directly there,
Nymaera to
Damn.
just
Well,
take.
I've got a lot of Mass Effect to play.
Travis,
so-
Yeah.
Travis, you beat him to the punch.
Yeah.
You know, you got in first.
Sure.
But yeah, thank you
I
for
appreciate it. Thank
setting
you.
all this up, Travis, and good luck with Mass Effect Nymaera, and you guys all have a wonderful night.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for
The game's
the
really difficult.
call,
I will
and
say.
we will catch you next time.
Yep, likewise.
All right. Off to the next caller.
Yeah.
Some more shout outs, by the way. We got, let's see. Oh, a lot of people over there. Notorious Bubble, Mac to Ace. Danny Grimm gifted 6 subs. Ben Jean, PP Doc. We got those folks
I
earlier.
also got gifted a
Frog.
sub, which thanks. by the
Yes,
way.
yes. I was going to say, Devious One gifted to Nymaera.
I appreciate that.
Swede gifted to Ixbix. Thank you, Swede, paying it forward with Ixbix, who's been a long-time supporter of the channel. And then Shadowbeam 2, thank you for the 40 months. Really, really appreciate it. Over on YouTube, Old Grandpa sent in $5 super chat, and Will Panzer sent in a 5 Aussie super chat. And then I did get just a straight-up donation to the channel from Martin. So thank you, Martin, for the $20 through the link tree. That's very generous of you. All right. We've got our next caller here. Grayska is here. Grayska, where are you calling from?
West Windover, Nevada.
West Windover, Nevada. What do you want to talk about on the show?
That the LCS has entirely dropped the ball on making any content around MSI during our 2 to 3 week break.
The LCS
nothing
did, you're
happening.
saying?
Yes.
You didn't enjoy seeing 2 episodes of The Dive in 1 week?
I love the dive, but I've been watching LCS since 2016, and I could not care less about any other region.
So I'm only referencing that because they did do like a Let's Go with Jat, and the Dive crew, and then they also did like a Dive episode as well, which was like an MSI preview. So there was some content there. But obviously you're saying that those are only 2 videos. You wanted to see more.
Right. So I would have loved like an 8 to 10 minute breakdown of each team in FlyQuest group, because I don't know anything about any of them.
Sure.
Or like some discussion around how 3 of the members of 2019 TL are at MSI again, the team that went to finals.
Did
4
you?
rookies.
Was that not discussed in the Dive or the Let's Go content?
Not really.
Okay.
The dive focused on all of the other regions, and the Let's Go, they kind of just shot the shit for a while.
You said they got to sit for a while?
No,
They shot the shit.
Yeah.
Shot the shit. Okay, yeah.
I appreciated the shooting of the shit on the Let's Go.
Yeah.
I
It
like
was
those.
good. It was good.
Yeah.
So I think, okay, I'm not justifying this, but I do want to shed some light on, because of my understanding of how Riot is structured. Riot divides esports into like the global team and then the regional teams. And so I think what ends up happening in these situations is it gets really awkward, because who should be making LCS or content about LCS going to MSI? Well, the team that is in charge of the LCS is like, okay, now we just prep for summer, because like MSI is happening and LCS, that's not LCS, and we do LCS stuff. And then the MSI folks are like, well, we're going to focus on the whole region and making global content. We're not going to necessarily make content for the LCS audience specifically. And so I think that is why you end up in situations like this where, like, I agree that it would have been really great for the LCS to make LCS content. Instead, the LCS was basically like, okay, we'll make one video, basically the same video twice, with the Dive folks, and we'll focus that on getting LCS fans ready for MSI with like MSI content. which is quite frankly more than they need to do because of the fact that like they don't MSI is not their purview. So that is why structurally something like this ends up happening, in my opinion, based off my understanding of it. That being said, I agree that there's just kind of a lack of hype content for us. You know, like I think it would have been really nice to see. I think it would have been really nice to see like a hype video for them, even if it's just like they pay an editor to create like a hype reel, sort of the way Sylvix has done in the past. For those familiar with his work, you know, like we're seeing posted a day ago, like a FlyQuest reviewing their best and worst LOL plays, which yes, they are a team going to MSI, but that is like inherently not MSI content. I'm going to look at LEC, actually. I'm kind of curious to see if they suffer the same problem.
Quick interjection here. Do you know if layoffs affected content crews, which would have been on this kind of content?
5,000%. I mean, so there was an entire content studio team that previously did, like they did a lot of the sort of in-studio skits and stuff like that. I'm actually friends with one of the folks who was on that team, and he did the dive. Dive's now switched to a different team, and he did some other stuff for them. And so that is why you see, in a lot of ways, less content from LCS now, is that they are down a pretty big group of folks. But even then, that team was not necessarily like that. That still falls under what I was saying, right? Is like that was an LCS team. Their focus was always LCS content. I think it's unlikely that they would have been making that. Interestingly enough, and I don't know if this makes you feel better, caller. It probably doesn't, but worth pointing out, LEC seems to have the same issue. They have posted like nothing in the last 2 weeks other than LEC pros create their ideal mid laner and best of coach reactions. So they've actually made even less MSI content than the LCS, which again is not to say that like,
and I do think also
that's an MSI preview right there.
I'm trying to remember if I saw some of the easy content folks saying that they were going to do MSI content. So again, they've kind of been elevated up to the MSI proper kind of thing. So they're maybe not available to do LEC kind of like regional perspective stuff at MSI. Potentially that's, again, it kind of crossed into the same conversation of like, well, actually, which perspective are you doing it from, and whose purview does that fall under? Like your region or right global kind of thing?
Yeah.
I do think the break is important, though, because EU didn't have this 3-week span of just nothing.
Yes.
They ended later than us.
Well, and one could argue that's why they ended up doing these 2 videos. So I think the bigger culprit, in my opinion, and Cubby, I think this was probably the call that we were talking about where I said Riot hasn't done much to hype MSI.
Yeah.
Yeah. The bigger culprit is actually if I go to the LoL esports YouTube, because, all right, you're right that like let's put it this way. If you compare the LCS YouTube channel and the LoL esports channel, which one of these channels has actually done more to prepare people for MSI? LoL esports is a global product. It's got a global content team. And like they're like, oh, here's Adam's ultimate list. Here's how to use map changes like a pro was posted a day ago. There is a format explainer which has 13 million views. By the way, this is crazy. It must have been pumped somewhere, or it must have been autoplaying somewhere, or something like that. Because this whole
client potentially
the LoL esports YouTube channel has like it'll have 16K views, 60K views, 22K views. Format explainer for MSI 2024, 13 million views.
It auto plays when you open League.
Oh, that's what it is then. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So, but that is like that format explainer and then this Become the Unknown sort of like hype video that they have are really the only 2 pieces of content that the LoL esports channel has put out. And I would argue that the LCS with the dive preview and with the show, the other show, the Let's Go show, has actually done more to prepare people for like watching MSI and getting context on all this stuff than any other Riot LoL esports product. So I would just change like from I somewhat agree with your take, but I think it is actually much more broad than that, which is like Riot did kind of jack shit to get people excited for MSI.
Maybe they're just becoming the unknown.
Yes, that's true.
They're just becoming unknown.
Dude,
the YouTube videos are unknown.
I don't know what happened to. I mean, I'm sure that part of this is like the layoffs and stuff, but
yeah,
like it's funny because one of the only things I did see about MSI this year was like the .esports article that was like, oh yeah, there's no Anthem. You know, like that's one of the few things that Riot has commented on with regards to MSI is like the lack of an anthem. And while I don't have an issue with them getting rid of anthems, because I agree with the general sentiment that like the
For
MSI,
MSI,
anthems were not
they were kind of low impact.
right.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. They did not really resonate as much as what happens with Worlds. Like,
Yeah.
I just generally feel like there's not been much of a marketing campaign whatsoever to get people hyped for MSI.
I'll be real. I don't care that much about the theme song, but like I think that it's totally valid to have like more preview content, like even just a hype video or like just a video where it's like short and condensed. Like I really appreciate the podcast. Like I consume those. I really like the episode of the dive. I like the Jet Let's Go. Like I thought LCS was doing good content, like just from like top to bottom, just like to prep for this week. Like where is my boilerplate? Like, I don't know shit about the other regions. Kind of like what this caller is, you know, talking about from Global being like, here are the things you can latch onto for these teams, like, coming in, right? Like, where is the, like, T1's back, and it's the same roster that won Worlds, right? Like,
Yeah.
But they didn't win LCK. Like, they lost to GenG, whose map play is, like, absolutely ridiculous. And Chovy is, like, the fucking, like, what do they call him? Like, the Banja right now?
Bondra,
yeah, of League. Like, where is that, right? Because like for me, like I like long form content. I'll consume that. Not everyone's in that boat, right? So I feel like that's really
not the highest engagement content. Really.
Exactly. That's a really big like missed opportunity. Like personally, I really like Dom's video. Like I haven't kept up with all the teams.
That's
in
great for
regions.
hardcore people. Yeah.
Yeah, like I thought his video was an awesome boilerplate of like, hey, here's what's up with the teams that are like, coming to MSI, right? Like if you want to get to know them, I highly recommend that video. But that's like what 38 minutes long. Like not everyone's gonna sit down and digest that, right? So, yeah, I think it was a big missed opportunity.
Oh, one shout out though.
Oh, sorry.
The LPL TikTok, which is not actually connected to the LPL English broadcasting at all, by the way, it's completely different. Stuff's weird at LPL English first, but like the socials aren't necessarily controlled by LPL English. But the TikTok content there has actually been great in terms of short form stuff to get ready for that team. Now, it's still not as big as like your LoL esports or like the other major regions in terms of their socials, but the actual content on there is pretty good from what I've seen.
Somebody in the chat, NFC, says they are saving this all for the MSA broadcast. They have a lot of air to fill. And while that is true, that like they are probably making a lot of content for that broadcast, and we're going to hear about it a lot. This reminds me of the interview I did with John Needham in 2022, right before World Finals, and it got released, I think, right afterwards. This was the Worlds that was in San Francisco. And one of the things he talked about was that how much he feels as though LoL esports has not done a good job and does not do a good job with sports marketing. He's like, we're just bad at sports marketing. And, you know, whatever, I don't even think you need to say sports marketing, like just general marketing, right? Like how many people, you know, I think part of the reason our viewership might be down for this episode, besides the fact that it's on a Tuesday instead of Monday, which I'm sure is a huge contributing factor, is also like how many people are legitimately excited about MSI. And I know a lot of the people that are listening right now live or Nymaera or whatever, like we're all like, yes, we are excited for MSI because we're living and breathing it. And the type of people that are showing up the night before or are waking up at 4 a.m. to talk about MSI on a show, like those people are obviously just diehard fans. But in general, like how many people know that MSI is starting in 4 or 5 hours? How many people know the teams that are there? Any of the stuff, you know? And so I like it is to go back to this, like, why is it that if John Needham feels like they need to get better at marketing and sports marketing and event marketing and all these things, why is the best thing that we've got so far for the Western audience from Riot like this 2-hour LCS podcast? You know, yeah. Like it's just wild to me.
I will say we just got tagged by someone in the Discord, so shout out to Will. But they said that last year for MSI, every region got like a 60 to 90 second hype video about them. And it was done by people within the region. Like that's baller as shit. Like I remember watching those, like getting excited, you know. So again, like for me, like that's digestible content that again, like I just want like even me, like I follow this, right? Like that's my job. I don't know everything about Loud and Astral coming into this tournament. I want stuff like from those people. It's like, hey, what's up, right? That's just completely MIA. And I feel like that's the high engagement stuff that Nymaera is like kind of referencing, where like where is it, right? Like that for me is like pretty low hanging fruit, but I mean those were really well edited and put together, and I'm sure that required a big features team, and I'm not sure what happened to that features team because I know that's like part of what got narrowed a lot with the cuts. So for both LCS and LEC, so yeah, I don't know, it sucks.
Yeah, wow, it is striking. I'm gonna try to put this this image up on the screen if I can, because Will over in the Discord
it's
shared
like 12
this.
different videos.
Yeah, it is
literally. It would have been like 11.
Jeez.
Yeah,
it's just a wall of stuff. And quite frankly, I remember this campaign. I'll be honest, like it.
Oh, I remember.
I was not the most
this
favorite of it because they were very short videos. They're like 1 minute long videos that are like super jump cutty and stuff. And like for me, it's not
for me, but it's good.
Right.
Like that.
Right,
that's
right.
Kind of the meta,
there was effort that was put into it, and like some of these like 45K views, 43K views, 36K views, like on the scale of MSI, I don't think that's like particularly impressive, but also it's a lot better than nothing. You know, like it's a lot better than posting how to use map changes like a pro with 15K views the day before. You know, like it's just
Shout out to Yasukeh in the chat too, saying that it's good like videos to play during the break times too. Like this is good content that you can use throughout the entire broadcast, right? Especially early on in the tournament where, like, I mean, again, our callers
Evergreen,
like,
for sure.
I only watch LCS. Like, what's going on with the other regions? Like, I want to get excited about the other teams here too, because like, let's face it, an LCS team probably isn't going to win this, right?
Actually,
so like, let's get to know those teams.
Yeah.
I stopped watching international after we get eliminated.
Oh, I mean, respect that you are.
I haven't watched the World
fan.
Finals ever.
You've
Wow,
never watched
that's
World
crazy.
Finals? Wow.
That's
Never.
actually crazy.
Have you watched VODs
The
of it?
closest I got was C9 Fnatic.
Honestly, I wish that I could live in your bubble, because that sounds so fucking fun as a fan.
Don't have
just
time,
live in
dude.
the world. Yeah, just live in that world. That sounds really fun.
Dude, like, I wish I could live like that, but I
I didn't
just
learn who
can't.
Def
I
was.
enjoy the suffering of knowing that I wasn't there too much. Like, I grew up, so my traditional sport that I grew up with is rugby union, and my dad's Welsh, so I'm half Welsh. I grew up watching the Welsh rugby team in a bad era. It was like, look, it was that kind of thing where you have to get ingrained with that pain to then enjoy it when you finally get the success later, if it's eventually going to happen. You know, that's not a guaranteed thing. But like, I wish I could live like that. It feels like a pure existence. Just do away with stuff where you're not involved.
It'd be great, man.
I mean, the nicest thing about that is your sleep schedule gets much better, because I actually don't fault any North American fan. I mean, I do think skipping finals is crazy, but I don't fault any North American fan who decides to like stop watching after North America goes out, because it is just constantly at a terrible time for us. It's just miserable. So
I know David Shynock was like, he set his browser to open up to r/LOL event VODs, and I worked a 9 to 5 for 2 years, and like I remember trying to stay spoiler free throughout the day to like go home and watch them after. That was a difficult task. Like, I didn't open Twitter at all during those days at work. It was really hard.
Yeah.
So respect.
Yeah.
When I was in uni, I did something similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Grayska, thank you so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out here at the end?
I want to shout out the LCS. I love the LCS. I wish they would give me content to support them because I want to support them. And also my Nissa that I pulled in 2019 at a pre-release that is stamped.
Nice.
It's a great card.
That's a great
He's a great
shout out.
planeswalker.
Yes. Are you gonna buy the Hatsune Miku MTG cards that just got announced?
I'm not into Hatsune. I bought 3 boxes of D&D cards, but I
Nice.
haven't played Magic in like 4 years.
Yeah, those are
Can you
great.
imagine you rock up to Commander and someone's just got the blue-haired anime waifu?
Yeah.
Can't
Dude,
wait.
it
It's gonna
is.
feel like Fourth Will.
Yeah, they are just they're going hard into anime these days and anime culture, in Magic, because I think they just realized like, oh wait, there's a ton of money we can get in doing this, so it's kind of funny. But anyway, thanks so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, we've got a couple more callers. What's up?
We do. I have 2 more in the bank. I do want to say that like I'm down to take probably at least 1 more. So if we have more takes that anyone has in the live stream, feel free to keep them coming, because I know that like our callers are a little bit. Some of them have dropped out as it's later in the night. I already pulled a few at the start, but I'm down to at least like go to 3 or 4 callers, or at least 3.
I think if we're at 2 right now, if we grab 1 more, I mean we've been taking kind of longer calls lately, so
yeah.
But we don't.
They've been good ones though.
We don't see as many people on the subtopics and pleb topics or sub calls and pleb calls thing. So if folks want to try to get in as a last minute thing, or if you join, go into the subtopics right now. Go into pleb topics. Type a concise take, tag Cubby. Maybe you can get pulled in for our last call. But you want to go grab the next person?
Got it.
Thank you to Shadowbeam, Santa Butt Stuff with the tier 2. I think you might be my only tier 2. Sorry if there are other folks, but I do appreciate that. Swad Father, thank you so much for the subs. Subbing to the channel is really great. If you are listening to the VOD or the podcast, there's a link tree that I post there that has a bunch of different options, including some free ways to support the channel. So you can go check that out. There's a bunch of options. Raz had me update my wish list this year because my birthday is on MSI Finals, and so my Amazon wish list is updated with wonderful things like I think I put toilet paper or something on there. All right, nocturnavi is here. Is that how you say it? Nocturnavi? Is that how you say it?
Yep, that's good. And
where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Chicago.
From Chicago. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So my take is that the leaked third international tournament starting next year should invite significantly more teams from weaker regions compared to what MSI does now. And I think this should be part of a larger effort by Riot to help elevate the level of play in weaker regions, because I think that will be better for both like the league esports ecosystem, but it's also better for viewers as well. And I can elaborate if you want me to.
Yeah, well, can you give some context on the thing, because I know this came out from a Sheep Esports list week, but I think some people listening might not be aware of this.
Sure. So I think it was leaked that next year Riot is planning to add a third international tournament instead of the 2 we currently have. There's not really much information on like format or who's going to be invited or how they're going to change like domestic leagues, but it's leaked that it's going to be a thing.
Yeah. And just for those that don't know, I mean, this would basically mirror the Valorant schedule. I think for a long time, Riot has been like, oh, Valorant is what we would do for League if we could, if we given everything. And so I think we've been slowly moving more and more towards this like Valorant way of doing things. But yeah, so you said you had some more context. Go ahead and let us know.
Yeah, so this was inspired by me looking at the upcoming play-ins matches and realizing that a lot of them are extremely predictable. That like the way League Esports is right now is that like China and Korea are clearly on top. You have NA and EMEA below them, and then you kind of have everyone else. And I think it means that like play-ins or early stages of tournaments are kind of predictable. If you aren't like invested in a play-ins team already, like it's harder to get involved in those storylines. And I just think from a viewer standpoint, it's not great. And from an ecosystem standpoint, it leads to a lot of like the doom and gloom we see in NA, like, oh, NA will never win anything. And realistically, I don't think any other region can catch up to where China and Korea are. But I think if we could at least like close the gap, like help minor regions become more competitive with like North America and Europe, or maybe even have like Europe and North America be at least a little better, it would lead to a much better viewership experience and would make like the system more sustainable in the long run. And so I think the best way to do that is just to invite more teams to a higher level of competition. Like a lot of minor regions only send like 1 team per year. And I just think that's really bad for elevating the level of play in a region. And so I think this new upcoming tournament that Riot is going to add, they should instead focus on like bringing in a bunch of like minor region teams that don't normally see a level of play internationally, and then like hoping that they can like bring their experience back to like minor regions and actually like improve the level of play over time, as opposed to just like sending one team that can't really help elevate the level of play in their region.
And out of curiosity, so would you invite like on the LPL, LCK, LEC, LCS, like the major region stuff, how many of those teams would you invite, if any?
I mean, I think you could invite still the top seeds, or you could like not invite the top seeds from those regions and instead invite like the 3rd or 4th seed or something, just to like make it more interesting. Like I don't have like some like super like
But
well
the
thought out
sentiment of
format.
giving like exposure to other teams in minor regions is basically that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So
that's what I'm most interested in.
I think that's cool. For me, if Riot were to do this, I actually think they already dropped the ball with having a 3rd international tournament. I would have preferred to have like 2 tournaments kind of running along the same time. And one is Eastern Hemisphere teams, and the other one's Western Hemisphere teams. And you just go from there. And that'd
Like
be
a
a good
Rift
way to like,
Rivals or
yearn
something.
for Rift Rivals.
Yeah.
yes, but it would be bigger Rift Rivals, you know?
Yep.
So I actually think that like that's the right way to go about featuring more teams. And I don't know. I think like we're getting to the point where it's like 3 international tournaments plus regular seasons. Like I'm kind of concerned about saturation at a point. Personally, I don't know what you guys think.
There is,
Oh,
there
this
is
is a
thing
hot
there.
take, Cubby. People have been asking for more than 2 international events forever, and you're now
Yeah.
worried about us
Yeah.
having a 3rd.
Well,
Yeah, but-
I'm down for that. I want majors, but that means that like killing off regular seasons or shortening them a lot.
No,
I-
so.
like this
Yeah,
is
go
like my entire soapbox, by the way, for like years of being the LJL guy. Like, because the problem is, if you consider, in this case, and I think you've completely nailed this on the head, caller, in terms of you send minor regions, send 1 team internationally, and maybe it's the same team both splits. Now, in the past, you would go into play-ins where you'd have some major region teams, and then like 1, maybe 2 minor region teams in your group in a play-ins of MSI and Worlds. And in best of 1 formats, that would mean you'd basically end up having, because the gap has been typically very large between minor and major regions, you'd have a couple of best of 1s there, which you're not really learning that much from, you're just getting stomped, and you'd have effectively per year, per tournament, 4 best of 1s per tournament, so you have 8 best of 1s to learn from the entire year. That's it. And that 1 team, typically the best teams which kind of win from the minor regions. Now you can think of the Turkish Supermassive team, you can think of some DFM teams before, you can think of some of the VCS teams before, some of maybe PCS this doesn't apply to as much as well, but this has definitely happened in other regions too. A lot of the time they're super teams, which have been put together for 1 year, where you've brought in some high-tier Korean imports, and they splinter after 1 split, and they don't, and particularly with the Korean imports, they often just jet back off to another region, or potentially back to academy teams or to wherever, and they don't keep that learning in the region. This has been a huge issue for multiple minor regions for a long time, where effectively you have a handful of best of 1s per year, which actually give them some learning, and they get flown immediately back from the event because they fall out at the earliest possible opportunity. They bring no learning from them, and you have these other teams which are gate kept beneath them anyway, because you have 1 or 2 teams in each minor region which are actually spending a lot to get themselves, championships and then go to international events. And that learning never drips down, ever. I think it is a really important thing to have some form of international experience and higher level of play exposure to 2nd, 3rd seeds from minor regions. What I would have suggested in the past, actually, is I would have had basically a Rift Rivals style tournament for minor region teams when you have like the top 3 teams from each region or whatever, as we did before, playing for seeding at international events. Because I think particularly with minor regions, we've had some years where, again, a super team's been built up, and they are well above. So we've had like, the LGL be a fourth pool team when they're clearly not that. Say, for instance, in 2021 with the Exodia DFM roster with like the best player of all time for the LGL in each role. And then, of course, they made World's Groups in 2021. Now, that was not a Pool 4 team. Not realistically. They were above that. But if you had a tournament before Worlds or before MSI to help determine seeding, or maybe even take the stakes up a step higher than that when you say, okay, PCS had 2 seeds historically, VCS had 2 seeds historically, why don't you have a Rift Rival style competition to determine who gets that 2nd seed? That could potentially be big stakes too. But the problem is right now, I think Riot need to make a bit of a revision on terms of MSI and Worlds in regards to what do you want it to be? Do you want it to be the best competition? In that case, realistically, minor regions shouldn't be there in the first place, and you should be inviting more teams from LCK, LPL, or wherever. Or do you actually want it to be an accurate representation of the fan base and the teams across the world? In that case, you actually need to set up a scene which actually supports those minor regions rather than just letting them be whipping boys in the first stage of the tournament, because there is no underpinning for these minor region teams.
Honestly, that's a good point, because for me, like, I'd be kind of cool with like this 3rd international tournament, just given that it's so early in the year. featuring more of these lower tier teams, if it had ramifications for MSI and
You have
Worlds
to have
later
stakes. That was the
on.
problem for Rift Rivals.
Yeah.
Rivals. They had no stakes. No one cared.
Yeah.
Not in that sense.
And then you can maybe squeeze in like extra LPL and LCK teams in like the later tournaments, right? Or like I actually kind of like that idea, and that's part of why, I don't know, I thought like the 2 tournaments running simultaneously is interesting. For me, like the other thing is like we used to have you know, like these smaller tournaments like wildcard qualifier tournaments, right? Or
IWCI, yeah.
Yeah, elongated play-in stages to see who actually gets in. And the thing for me is like those tournaments were fun, or that part of the tournament was fun, but I want to see more games played between top teams, right? And that was always the issue. Like, why are we giving like a CIS team that doesn't make groups more games than the teams actually
Well,
in
that
groups,
was the year
right?
when they had the team of 3, so they had to do like the
Right.
quadruple round robin. So that was a massive,
Right.
like crazy one anyway.
But this is a way where you could have those teams actually get games, but then again, like it's early in the season, so I don't know. But that's kind of why I'm down for like the 2 simultaneous tournaments, because you could get more teams involved and envelope them in, and then give people a reason to latch onto those teams and those seasons like throughout the rest of the year to see if they can make MSI or Worlds. That's kind of my idea behind it, and why I think casting a wider net earlier on would be a little bit more fun.
I really like the idea of doing, I mean, so I hear what you're talking about when you're saying like, oh, this is something that would be a qualifier for Worlds or whatever. But I do like the idea of interspersing these international. One of the challenges I think with the current LCS schedule is that the splits feel really long, and maybe not as much with the LCS with how much we've condensed it and done all this kind of weird stuff to it. But like compared to other esports where you have a couple of months of or less of domestic stuff. Actually, a lot of esports just don't even do the domestic international stuff, right? But like you just have these like these faster checkpoints of something exciting happening. And so that's one of the reasons why I do like the timing of putting this earlier in the year. But I do like the idea of splitting like the hemispheres or splitting these into 2 and not making it Rift. The biggest issue with Rift Rivals was that it took place in the middle of summer split randomly. And like you had this teams that would come over, it wasn't worth much or whatever. Like if you did incorporate a lot of different regions, and to the caller's point, like you gave a chance for some of these lower team or lower regions to be able to knock out some of the bigger regions or do something interesting there. I think that could be pretty compelling, and it does, like the LCK LPL rivalry is real. The LEC LCS rivalry is real. Like the new formats at Worlds and stuff are finally letting us actually enjoy that a little bit more, but having dedicated events to that I think would be quite nice. And I do think you could run these concurrently with each other, in terms of, I guess like the casting logistics and stuff might be kind of weird, but like I do think you could have these taking place alongside each other at different time zones. That's the other thing it helps with, by the way, is the time zones.
You know?
Yeah, that's
like,
true. That's true.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
that's the other thing that it helps with is the time zone
Everyone needs a
stuff,
Japanese
right?
League of Legends expert anyway.
Because like quite frankly, if I'm a North American fan, I'm like, oh cool, a third international event. Will I be able to fucking watch this one? You know, because for so many people these ones aren't available. But if this was, if all you needed to worry about was the North American Europe time zones, for instance, or MENA, and South America, however you want to do it, like you can actually just tailor that for the time frame for that stuff. So I don't know. I like this stuff a lot. I think it could be really good if Riot does it correctly. My biggest concerns are, one, people who I don't watch Valorant much, but like one of the things I do know is they play very few games, especially like their domestic stuff. I mean, there's a reason why LCS only needed to worry about 3 weeks of Valorant play whenever Valorant was in the studio during that time. Like back to kind of what Cubby was saying earlier is like, Cubby, you were saying you're worried about the schedule getting too full, and maybe the way they'd have to do that is they'd have to cut a bunch of games. Like I quite frankly imagine that would be what they would be down to do. Like I would imagine that they are probably looking at formats that cut a lot of games, because also that's a great way for them to save money, which is clearly what Riot is trying to do right now.
We get the LEC format, Travis. It's going to be great.
Yeah. But the
Do you
LEC
enjoy
format,
having 7 finals per year or whatever? It
yeah.
is?
The LEC format still has a lot of games and a lot of days. Like if you
I mean,
told
I'm
me
joking.
that they were gonna,
LPL format's gonna be a mess too. I can't even complain
Oh,
anymore.
I don't
God,
even know.
The
Yeah.
LPL format. There was a call about that. I'm like, we're not getting into that this episode because that is a mess on its own.
yeah.
They would give me a migraine.
Jesus.
But like if you
Or-
tell me that they're
yeah,
just gonna
especially.
they're gonna just start hyper compressing these schedules to try to get us into these international events as fast as possible. I mean, that's basically what they and save a ton of money in the process. Like that is basically what they do in Val. And so
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if they do that here. I mean, people forget, but there was a time where like the LCS split was like 9 to 10 weeks long, and then we had like a 4-week long playoffs. It was crazy. So, and now everything is shortened a lot. But like I don't know. I just think they're going to probably try to cut a lot of things here, and the way that they'll justify it is with a third international tournament, which to some people I think will be excited. We're way off topic.
For
though.
minor regions, I do really
Yes.
appreciate the idea that there's more exposure for them, because like I've seen multiple regions, and I talk to people from all over, like where they have
They need
like
it.
one team that's like going internationally all the time, like your GARMs, your DFMs, or like Rainbow Seven or whatever, and like no one else in the region gets to get any international exposure ever. So the region just stays kind of bottlenecked for forever.
Yeah.
It's an important conversation to have, because the system is just not there to add. Minor regions are basically there as like a token effort to the rest of the world. Like right now, there's no system for them. I completely agree with that sentiment.
I mean, the only reason why I'm worried for you and Nymaera with this situation is more and more I just feel like Riot is like, so how many of these minor regions do we actually need to run? You know, like how can we? I think they regret what I think when they launched, they had something like when they launched LCS and this international league system. I think they launched with like 16 different regions, if I recall correctly. Something
16,
crazy
I
like
think
that.
it was 17. Or
No, I think it
what
was 16 because I think
19?
they had like a round number,
Okay.
but maybe I'm wrong. They had an insane amount, and
Oh,
they were
GPL was a thing too. Yeah.
they were
There were so
very
many.
excited about how many leagues they had, and this was at a time where like Riot just didn't give a shit about how much money they were spending on esports. It was like endless cash was just flowing in, and I think now they're like, oh fuck, like maybe we should not have done that, and so they've been paring this down over and over and over again, and I feel like it's just going to. I mean, the best example of this is the rumor that we've talked about multiple times on the show that there will not be an LCS next year, or if it is in name only, and that what we actually have is an Americas region, which is what Valorant has, right? If they can move LATAM and Brazil into North America, then they have just they've just merged 3 regions into one, and and then this stuff caller gets a lot more complicated, because let's say they're saying that doing that in Americas, they're doing it in other places, like you won't actually need the shitty thing is you won't actually need to highlight minor regions, because there won't be minor regions. You'll just have all these mega regions, you know.
I will say PCS playoffs was really fun, seeing a lot of these different regions play it off too. For those of you like who didn't watch PCS like playoffs this time, like I'd really suggest watching it next time around. It was genuinely really entertaining. Like it was like a mini international event, which with stakes. Again, that's like the big thing for me. It was actually kind of enjoyable. Like you just need to find a way to do that that doesn't cost a ton of money and is sustainable, I guess, is the big takeaway.
That's why like running a couple of those for me for this third international would have been actually really fun, because like for me that's kind of manageable, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but caller, I love your take. I'm taking it as a like sort of sad, idealist take on what you're sitting here thinking. Like, can we get more international regions at these events? And I think Riot's like,
stand on this hill with you.
and I think Riot is thinking, you're thinking, can we get more international regions at these events, or at this one specifically? And I think Riot's thinking like, can we get rid of these minor regions? Like, I don't.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
part of what inspired this take was because I also watch Valorant, and watching like going into a tournament and having genuinely no clue what region can win is so exciting. And in an idealistic world, I would love to be able to say the same in League. It's not going to happen, but if you could get closer, I think that would be a really good viewing experience.
Yeah, it just sucks that the way we might have to do it, you know, and what you're suggesting would be like have it be less known who's going to win by just not inviting the best teams. You know, like, I don't know. This just feels kind of a bummer, right? Well, thank you so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out here at the end?
Sure. Shout out Kelsey Moser for being the only analyst I saw who correctly predicted that C9 would have problems this split. And then shout out to my roommate for listening to me rant about esports topics despite having no clue what I'm talking about.
Fantastic. Well, if you're shouting them out on an esports show, I think it is unlikely that they will learn about this shout out, sadly. You can tell them about it. Either way, thank you so much for the call. We'll catch you next time.
Goodbye.
All right. We've got 2 more callers to go.
Yeah.
Let's get through them. We'll try to get through them quickly so that Nymaera can go back to sleep. Are you going to go back to sleep, or what are you going to do? You gonna
It's a bit of a lost cause at this point. Like, we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
doublezeee is here. doublezeee, where are you calling from?
Yeah, I'm calling from London, Ontario, Canada.
London, Ontario, Canada. What would you like to talk about on the show?
So yeah, I want to talk about mainly about expectations for Western teams, not just North America, that they should always be high going into international tournaments. No, like, there's no excuse for them to be low. I know, like, based on historic results, they shouldn't be high, but they should be, because if we don't have those expectations, that means there's no motivation or push behind the players, having them wanting to achieve actual, like, results on an international tournament, right? So the more people have higher expectations, the more the players will try to meet them.
That's fair. Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So, for example, right now, going into this international tournament, we have Team Liquid and we have FlyQuest from North America. We have Fnatic and we have G2 from the LEC, right? So what the expectations here is that I'm making it out of groups, making it at least top 4 should always be the expectation. At least for one team from the Western region to make top 4 should always be an expectation. There is no excuse for me in my mind why a Western team can at least get top 4, right? I know that the idea behind teams from the LCK or from the LPL, they just practice more, they spend more time on the game. That shouldn't be an excuse for why our players are just not performing as well. You know what I mean? The strive should always be there. Hunger should always be there. Should always want to achieve results at the international stage, and if fans don't show that expectations to the players, then players are just gonna kind of stagnate and just kind of like give up. Which, by the way, from my opinion, is kind of what happened those past few years. Is that the players just didn't really care about international success and they just focused on their own region success.
Cubby, do you want to dive into this first?
I mean, part of me respects this. You know, it's Mamba mentality, right? We can't make excuses. Every tournament you go into is a blank slate. You never know. I mean, I do respect that. Like, I mean, from talking with these teams, like, these guys are serious athletes. Like, they want to go out there and win. But I mean, there's also the reality that you're going up against teams that are better than you, right? So, like, I mean, we watch a lot of tape, right, between me and Nymaera, like a lot of other folks do. There's a reason that there are tier lists that have Western teams in the middle, right, and not at the top. There is the reality of where teams are in terms of watching the tape and where they can be at. I mean, that can be broken, right? And that happened last year when NRG beat G2, right? It was not expected. Yeah, it was not expected that NA and NRG would top 8. They did, and they managed to do that. So, for me, part of the fun of that was that I wasn't expecting that to happen. That was genuine surprise, and that's part of the fun of sports, that even a team that's not expected to win, you can win things and beat expectations for you, and that is a micro win. Now, I can also respect the mentality of we're not done yet, right? We want to go for the championship. And I mean, that should always be the goal, but there's also just the reality that you're facing where these teams and players are way better than you, right? Like you are a mid-conference school going up against a top school in like football or basketball. Like, I'm gonna, compare this to sports, which Travis will hate, but I mean that really is like what I feel like going into these tournaments, right? I don't expect these teams to win the whole thing. I mean, I hope that we can see a Western team top 4, whether it's EU or NA. I think that would be a great story, and it would make Worlds a lot more exciting in terms of what we expect going into there, regardless of which team from the West hopefully makes top 4, right? But again, there is the reality where we're still talking like in that perspective. It's not like we're talking about like, hey, you know, can an NA team or EU team maybe win or make finals? It's like, no, we're just praying that one of these 4 teams actually makes top 4 and like cracks these top dogs. So like even in your point, you still discuss the bias like that we have, which is the reality that we're grounded in, which is we are worse teams going into this. So from a competitive aspect and perspective, I completely agree with you. And I really think and hope that our teams approach it as we are going there to win the tournament. But then there's the reality of you have to go lane against Chovy. And that is playing a different ball game, right? So, like, it is, like, yes, as a competitor, you have to go in with, like, the ignorance of, like, we can win this game, right? But in the tape, like, we live in the reality where we watch a lot of tape, and that's not what we expect, right?
But this is where, like, I think I wouldn't necessarily look at Western regions for this, for the best examples of this. I would look at Albus Nox Luna. I think you look at, in terms of mentality, there was a great conversation interview from Utapon after 2022 Worlds when they were facing RNG in play-ins there as well, where Utapon said, look, we are going into this match in play-ins as though we are playing the World Finals, because that's the mentality that they would need to overcome RNG at that point. You look at the CBLOL teams, they're standing up and screaming every game because they have that kind of fire behind them. I don't necessarily see that same kind of fire in Western teams of this era right now. But, you know, you look at some teams which have gone in, they have accepted that they are not going to win the game if they are playing it the same way as other teams. One thing which I don't know, actually...
man. Dude, Inspire was flaming his teammates, man. That's some fire, you know?
Sure, but, like,
yeah.
I do think there is a level between that and, say, for instance, some of the CBLOL teams in the past, which are, like, some of the most passionate people out there.
Yeah.
There's a much of emotions. But either
different.
way, typically... the way that Western teams and minor region teams have done best is when they have made the game not about laning against Chovy if you have to lane against Chovy. You make the game about something else. You just flip it and you play something else. If you imitate greatness, you're only going to be an imitation of greatness. And the further the way you drip down, where like you've gone from like your top LCK, LPL teams to maybe even sometimes some of the mid-table where they're just trying to top the top table. And then you have like some Western teams which are copying from watching a brawl but not actually scrimming them as well. And then you have the minor region teams which are coming in, learn a bit during the scrims when they're playing towards play-ins. Like, you're not going to win by playing catch-up. And this is, I mean, there was a really, one of my big gripes this year with LEC was week 1 of Winter was played before LCK and LPL started, when LEC this year, and it looked utterly different from week 2, because between week 1 and week 2, they got to watch some LCK and LPL and they just copy what they did. Where are the analysts? Where are the crazy chefs doing their own thing? Why are we not determining our own game anymore? Back in like 2019, when we had the Pyke 5-way flex from G2, and stuff like that, that was when you could derail a lot of the more kind of dominant teams from the East, and it might not always be pretty, and you're going to have a lot of missed shots if you're going to go real kind of like cooking in the sauce like that. But I think one thing which I think has been lost, particularly from teams which are not just going to be good and have a good baseline, but actually genuinely try and have a shot at winning. And I actually do agree with this caller. Like, I think someone needs to go with that mentality and say, well, okay, if we're not going to win in the traditional sense, how can we win? What is the unorthodox way we can do that? I think there's been a bit of a lack of that, actually, for me recently.
Okay.
But
that's fair.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, caller. You were saying it's on the fans to have these expectations, right?
Oh, so it is mainly to do with the fans, which in return causes the drive behind the players and their mentality, right?
Yeah,
so yeah. So what I'm saying is, and you're completely right. That exactly like what you're saying is exactly what I'm trying to is my conclusion. Because as soon as fans give up these expectations, teams are gonna give them up as well, because there's no one really building that fire behind them, right? And the reason is because we've seen teams from like back in the days, from like TSM and Cloud9 and Fnatic and G2, like we were able to discuss actually competing at an international event. I actually used to have a great time watching MSI and Worlds back then when we actually used to perform. Maybe like there was like 1 year we did not perform, but the following year we did. But for the past 3 or 4 years, it's been a complete mess, and I feel like teams have given up that goal of trying to like go into these tournaments. I think right now the mentality is go into this tournament and give our players the experience. That way next year when we go and tackle the tournament again, we'll have that experience. But that doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? Like I remember when EG made MSI with JoJo, everyone's expectation was like this will be a good experience for JoJo, and I'm like, yeah, but the mentality shouldn't be not just for him to get the experience. It should be for them to go in and do some damage in this tournament. We're not just here to gain experience.
Here's
like,
what
we're here to win.
Here's where I want to sort of find this line, because I think one of the challenges is, well, so two things. One, I don't think that teams' expectations should be derived from fan expectations. Like you're sort of saying, like, hey, the fans need to have these expectations because otherwise the players won't. And I disagree with that. I think players and teams should be inherently finding their own expectations, especially because
competing, everyone's blocked. I'm
right,
not
right.
on Twitter. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So there's that. The second thing is, I think one of the challenges, and I'm not saying that everybody needs to be like, oh, LCS is gonna go and fucking suck, but I think one of the challenges that you run into is if you're a fan, and you're like, our teams are supposed to win this tournament, is that when something goes wrong, not only do fans are they disappointed and have frustrations, which I think are fair, but they tend to start getting kind of shitty. This is where you start to get like the witch hunts on which player failed the most. Fucking get them out of here. They fucking
and they
suck.
genuinely affect careers too.
Yes, and that I think has actually more damage for the team than that. So like I think that every fan needs to find their own expectations. I think it's important that they be supportive and stuff. I think it's shitty if a fan is just like, yeah, we're gonna fucking suck, our team suck, blah 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 blah. But I think it is on each fan to find their own expectations, and I'm not going to fault somebody who's looking at our teams going up against T1 and other scary folks at this event and thinking to themselves like, well, let's see what we could do, you know. And I get that that's like maybe controversial because there's a lot of people that are like, rah sports, you must always believe 100%. But like I kind of push back on the idea that like we should always just magically pretend that like our players are world champions right now.
There's the other side of
know?
that too, where actually, like, I think particularly in League, there is a big aversion to supporting teams for like any other reason besides the fact that they are good and they're playing well. You're allowed to support teams like even if they're doing badly too. I think I think particularly in the West, it has become. I think that there is a distinction here between like we've had now several years where everyone's been dunking on the West. And that does eventually start to drain through to mentality as well. Even if you're blocking Twitter for big parts of tournaments, if you see this for years, it does take a lot of that too. I mean, you're allowed to support teams just because you like that team and you support them as well. And sometimes, yeah, that does come with taking your lumps and taking some losses at big events too. You're allowed to support them anyway. And that's a good thing. In fact, that's inherently a good thing. I think it's actually very good to have supporters not tied to performance like that too. But then that allows you to support them, come what may with the results too, which then gives you that fire in terms of like just being that extra little give, which can help. Unlike most players at the top level, it doesn't affect them that much now. But yeah, it's nice at least, even just for other fans, to see that people can just keep supporting anyway.
I do want to. Go ahead, caller.
So I just want to clarify a point. So there is a difference between toxic fan base and an actual fan base behind a team. Now, a lot of the hateful comments that you see from a team not performing and not doing well are probably just toxic individuals in general who just want to shit on any region that's not performing well anyways, and all regions have those fan base. We're talking about actual genuine fans here who generally want to see their region thrive and do well on international tournaments, right? That's where I believe the expectations should be. And at the end of the day, I understand that players should go in with everything blocked except his mentality. But at the same time, they're like just like any other sport, right? All sports have fans, And part of the reality is that an athlete, when they perform, there's a lot of expectations from their own fan base, and that just comes with the game, with the industry that you are in. It's just part of the life that you are in right now. You know what I mean? And having having these fan base and then being a huge part of the success of any region, it is basically the whole, like, the way that the region would thrive is to have a strong fan base. As soon as you say that a player should just completely block like all fans and focus precisely on winning the competition, that's fine. That's never gonna happen, right? Because wherever you go, you'll always see fans comments. You'll
Well, that's
always see
what they just
fans
don't go
in
to
front
any of
of
these
you.
places. They don't open Reddit. They don't open social media. They don't look at YouTube,
Well,
et cetera, et cetera.
Double Lift has mentioned more than once that pro players do actually read Reddit comments. They actually
Yeah,
go
but
up and
he's
they do
also
read.
Some
talked about
do.
how he doesn't.
Yeah.
And Peter is a very strange exception to the rule in a lot of ways on this stuff. Look, really quickly, and we do need to move on to the next call, but I think one other point I want to highlight on this caller is, like, your suggestion that we all believe that our teams are going to go off and win or can win. I think one of the things that it hurts me the most to feel is the loss of the underdog story. Because when you just believe inherently that your team is worthy of lifting that trophy and as good as everybody else that's there, you take away those moments that where, like, your team was not expected to do this. You did not expect this team. The
2019 MSI. Like
Yeah,
TL and G2 making it. Like
Detonation
that was
Focus Me
massive.
2021.
Yeah, there's like a ton of
Yeah.
examples of this stuff, right? Where, like, if we all sort of sat around and sung Kumbaya and thought, like, okay, our teams are as good as all of them, and, like, no matter what happens, like, it's a reasonable result. Like, it takes away my favorite moments in esports, which, quite frankly, are those upsets and those stories, you know?
Also, like, returning to, like, fan pressure, I mean, I really like what Spawn says about TL fans. Like, they do let TL hear it sometimes, but also they're the first ones to cheer him on. Like, that is a good fan base, right? Like, you do want your fans to care. You want fans invested. But, like, there's pros and cons to that, right? Like, think of Yawn as a player. Like, Yawn didn't play well at Worlds. Like, no one's going to say he did, right? But there were a lot of people clamoring in the offseason to replace Yawn in APA. Like, TL stuck with him, and Yawn, I think, was a huge part of the reason they ended up winning. Like, he was great in playoffs, and him and Core played really, really well. I'm excited to see Yawn, to see, like, how he grows at this MSI and if he can have a good international tournament, right? Like, you have to have arcs for players, because it's, like, yeah, like, every once in a while you're going to get someone, like, right now in the NBA, Anthony Edwards is 22, and he's putting up ridiculous playoff numbers. Like, it's been a really long time since we've seen a player this young do what he's doing, and that's really cool. That's
Right,
not
Cubby-
the expectation.
Cubby's gone into
Like-
sports references, so we got to wrap this up.
Like, Yawn, like, you have to set expectations. Like, when you overachieve them, you get rewarded, right? Like, there has to be expectations at some point, because that's how we judge you. Like, and that has to be reasonable. Like, that's what makes, like, if JoJo fisted his first like international tournament, then yeah, that's crazy. Like, if he goes on to win it, that's crazy. Like, that's what happened with Faker, right? In Season 3 Worlds. Like, you have to have expectations that when you do beat them, it gets really cool.
Anyway, thank you so much, doublezeee. I'm so
Sorry,
sorry.
it's
We have to move on to the next caller. We're over time for the show, and Nymaera's.
Right. Yeah, no worries.
I'm still awake.
I know.
Like,
But
get
we have to get through a whole another call.
Yeah.
So, doublezeee, thank you so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out?
Thanks. I know. Shout out to you guys for doing the show on a weekly basis. It's my first time on the show. That's great. Great conversation, guys. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I want to thank
thank
you.
you.
A lot of
Appreciate
our
it.
callers, and I totally understand, because it's kind of, you can be kind of nervous to call in. They call in, say their take, and then they sort of bow out until the end. But I always appreciate it when we have an active caller, because it keeps the conversation flowing. So thank you so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
All right. See you guys.
All right.
Sweet. Last one.
I'm
last
going to
call.
shout out my next energy drink because I need it.
Oh my god. All right. We've got over on Twitch. We have Keyworm, who sent a prime, Bowen with the 400 bits, and ENS Hero with the 23 months. Twitch, I think, might have caught up to YouTube in terms of support. YouTube fell asleep at the wheel for the last hour, and that's fine. You guys don't. I appreciate all of the people just watching. You don't need to send anything in, but I do like to play you against each other. Basil is here. Basil, where are you calling from?
calling from California.
California, what do you want to talk about on the show?
I want to hype us up. MSI is about to start, and I think that TL could make top 4, and I think GenG is going to once again shit the bed at another international tournament.
So is saying TL could make top 4 really hyping us up?
I think so.
You know, at Worlds we made top 8, and we haven't beaten a Eastern team in how long? In a best of 5?
I think most people expect G2 to be the Western team, the top 4 if anyone. So I think, and also, like, I think there's an argument to be made about whether TL or FlyQuest are stronger coming in. So I think it's kind of hyping up TL.
I guess that's fair. I mean,
Yeah.
again, thinking about all the different teams that are here, it's just like when I think hype up. I have been trained over the past 6 years of doing the show to expect callers to come and be like, "Yo, I think TL can make finals, maybe even win this whole thing." And based off of our last call, maybe the audience and the fans have become more tame and more reasonable over time. But all right, Basil, why do you think TL can make top 4?
Mainly, I think that 2 of the 4 Eastern teams aren't nearly as strong as people think they are. I think most people are a little cold on top esports because people have recognized that TN kind of ints and has the tendency to sprint it down on occasion. But honestly, GenG has been pretty lackluster at every international tournament that they've been a part of, at least recently. And PaY's looked terrible in the playoffs this year. So I think there's actually a pretty good chance for a Western team to get it done, and I think that TL is probably the strongest Western team right now. I think our worst player is APA, but this is kind of his meta. His champions are actually strong for a change, and I think that with kind of the one weakness the team had kind of being patched up, I think that we have a pretty good chance to make a deep run.
Sorry, I was not laughing at your take. I was laughing at Nymaera's eyes almost falling out of his skull when you said that.
I'm gonna take another strong swig of energy drink for that.
How much
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do the normal thing. Not to put you on the spot, but how much LEC have you watched, and how much G2 have you watched?
G2, I've actually watched most of the LCE this year. And
LEC?
I watched, LEC, whatever. I don't care about Europe. Fuck
Well,
them.
you're kind of doing yourself a disservice right now.
I mean, I don't care.
keep going.
This is
great. This is
the Europeans, to be honest. But I watched most of the playoffs for LCK, and they did look strong. But also, I mean, like, GenG has looked strong in LCK forever.
No, I'm going
be the
on.
weakest that they've looked.
I'm trying to get your TL as the strongest Western team. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Well, I mean,
yeah, I'm trying to
LEC
understand why you feel they're stronger than, for instance, G2.
I don't even think that's a hot take this year. Like, as someone who watched like a good bit of the LEC, and I did watch the Jungle with Copy.
Nice.
Most Europeans were actually kind of down on the region this year, and they all seemed very doomer, and they were kind of like, oh, G2's good, but a lot of them were also complaining, especially in Spring Split, saying that G2 doesn't look as good as they usually do. And people have been making excuses, but they didn't actually look super great in finals. I think people are overhyping their whole, oh, you don't understand, they're just going to lane swap and they're going to win off the lane swaps. It's like, I just think that's not actually that strong. You didn't really see it in the LCK finals. You didn't really see it in the LPL finals. I think that's just kind of a red herring.
Okay,
and I don't think G2 is that strong.
So low key, like, what do you think about lane swaps coming to this Nymaera? Because I'm really interested in the first few days to see like how much teams will actually be utilizing lane swaps. Because a lot of it you kind of give away in draft. Like I think the big thing for G2 is that when you lane swap with a Jinx and an ASOL, Jinx uniquely can take towers so quickly. And in lane swaps, jungles have to be very active around the lane that you're going to overload. And so it usually leaves mid a little bit more AFK, which really benefits a champion like Aurelion Sol that G2 was like doing a good job of understanding and abusing. And like for me, this leans into what you were saying about forming your own identity as a team, right? Like this is something that G2 is actually doing and like could be a legit strategy for them coming into this tournament, that they have more time playing this style than other teams. Like for me, that's always an edge that you have in League and knowledge gap.
So I actually think there is, lane swaps don't always have to culminate in you taking early towers either. I think this is like something that we saw particularly from top esports in a couple of their lane swaps, where actually sometimes it can be just enough to avoid a kill lane. Now, if you're playing like Ashe, Draven, Kalista, Varus lanes or whatever,
you take
can
Jinx
just
Lulu out of it, right?
You
Like,
just
that's great.
don't die, and that is already enough value. Yeah, you might even lose out on overall gold, but it doesn't matter because you haven't died to the Lucian Nami or whatever.
Yeah,
and that's
you have
completely
Jinx
fine.
Lulu Aesol.
So
it's great.
But even with that, there is a decent chance we don't see any lane swaps at all at MSI, actually, because we had some grub buffs come through which change how valuable they are in early game, and that changes things an awful lot in regards to how you organize the map in terms of early objectives. So it wouldn't actually I would imagine some teams are going to try it anyway, because again, just flip some games of the lane swap, see if it works. It wouldn't surprise me if we see much less from that anyway. But I think not to say that Caller is saying that G2 will only win through lane swaps, and that's what people are saying about them. I think if you get G2 into standard lanes, I still think they are some of the very best laning players in role, like in the West altogether anyway. I think that one of the big X factors which G2 have over the rest of the LEC, and this is a big criticism I had of the rest of the LEC, was G2 are the only team I think confidently play out kill lanes. They have an incredibly good Draven player who also plays an incredibly good Lucian when he chooses to pick it. Wasn't a choice pick of G2. And he's a fantastic Kalista player too. So if you're sat there with less confident bot lanes, or, for instance, players which are not playing the kill lanes themselves from other regions as well, I think G2 will absolutely eat you for breakfast. If you give them the Draven, I think you just straight up lose that lane. So I think that if you're in particular, I think one of the things where, so if we're then kind of shadowboxing TL versus G2 in terms of like, well, which is the best team in the West, I think there's already an inherent disadvantage in the fact that I think that Hans and Mickey, just in terms of raw laning, well, Mickey's been all over the place, but even with that, I think that G2 are the best kill lane bot lane, and that is very meta right now when you have like Varus, Lucian, Kalista, and the Draven as well, like being so strong for them too. I think that can be a huge issue just on that level. I think TL good in the mid game when it comes to their rotations. I think they're a very organized team. I just don't know if they'll survive to that point.
Question, Nymaera. Does G2 play with all chat on? Because I don't know. I don't know if you know what's coming for them, or if they know what's coming for them. But we have a little secret weapon in the mid lane.
They used to when they had Wonder. Nowadays, I'm actually not sure. All chat got really weird with like Calming Core versus Mad Koi, because that was all kinds of crazy.
Sure.
There are definitely some teams which do. I don't know how keyed into the all chat meta G2 are though.
I mean, it's they're European of. They've got to be fine with it. I assume they're going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I recognize that they were doing this when APA was learning how to play League of Legends, but like I'm excited to see if MSI
also like for the caller, I don't. It's funny, like if you're a fan of Western League of Legends, there's a pendulum. It's are we flaming NA or EU? And I do feel like the pendulum kind of flipped to flaming EU this split. But I don't think anyone was ever flaming G2. It was always like, G2 is the exception, and they're probably the best Western team, but the rest of LEC is, like, poor, right? I will say that, like, I think there's a little bit of bias because LEC, their playoffs were later, while LPL and LCK playoffs were running, and so you were going from a night of watching LPL and LCK playoffs and then watching LEC, and that was a little bit jarring. Whereas LCS, like, that ran actually before that, and I think that LCS playoffs also had some really weird games, like the TL FlyQuest series was literally a blur that had over 200 kills within the 5 games, right? Like, that's not what I'd argue is a clean series, but it existed. I do think that, like, you would have more validity by saying that G2 played in a weaker region overall this split, rather than saying that G2 is a weaker team. Because I actually think, like, that's something that I don't think it's going to matter that much for G2, but, like, that would at least make a little bit of a better argument.
And then obviously there's the whole, GenG, would they choke again?
Yeah.
The big difference here for me in terms of GenG historically, and then now, I love Peanut, but he's not Canyon. Canyon is absolute
That's
superstar.
a great point, Nymaera. That's a great point.
Like, I love Peanut, but, like, Canyon is just, like, another level when it comes to important games and, like, being just an absolute star player. I think that Peanut was a big part of their regional dominance before, because I think he was really good at containing early games from teams like T1 and, like, stopping them from exploding lanes. Canyon can do that, but I just don't think he's going to have the same kind of like lack of visibility and impact on global stages again. And like, even if this is the same kind of problem I have when it comes to West versus East, when it's like, well, what if Paze chokes, what if Tien chokes? Yeah, but what about the other 4 players which are absolutely slamming your head against the bricks? Because
Yeah.
I feel like, particularly against top esports, this is a big issue I have with. Again, I think this might be a bit of an issue for TL where, well, we'll see actually for them because I think actually you look at top lane, maybe
Ooh.
that's okay. But
Well,
I think that just the laning phase of like Jackalov Mako is just how do you get through that?
Actually, one thing that I think a lot of people are sleeping on coming into this tournament, Nymaera, is that Cream's entire champion pool did get buffed. Like it was the Akali, the Yone, the all these changes that's just like very Cream centered. I think it really helps TES actually.
Now, if Cream has a bad international debut, then they are very
they're
fallible.
toast. They're not top 4ing if Cream doesn't play well. That's
the thing which I think is crazy is the fact that Jackalov and Mako are so goddamn good that they might even just clutch it out even just through them. So that's actually just a threat on its own because I think they might just. Well, they're up there with like the best laning bot lanes in the world. Yeah. But yeah, if we're gonna have like people forget that Cream is an incredibly good Akali for like 1 game, and then he won't have it for the rest of the tournament. That'll probably happen at some point.
Hui's also really good. Hui got buffed.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Which
is so crazy to think.
Yeah.
He was never a mage player before like this year, realistically as well. So that's an incredible like evolution of him as a player. So
also,
in terms of like,
forgive me for interrupting, but isn't this also his first international though?
It is. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And he is known to do a spicy int or 2. So we'll see if that. Returns.
I mean, I feel like every LPL team and player, they have the spicy int in their background. It's just part of the identity. It's part of the fun, because that's just how the region plays, right? They're gonna play off timers and they're gonna play aggressive. It happens.
But like Kai'Sa ulting into 4 people to lose yourself at game 5 last playoffs.
Sounds pretty spicy.
That was a fun clip. We play for fun sometimes.
Oh man, that was tough. Being part of the lactose tolerance club, my personal investment in Cream's fan club. It's a hard journey, man.
Yeah.
So okay, let's do a rating here. What are the chances that TL? How wild or how spicy of a take is it that TL could get top 4 between the crew here? Nymaera seems shocked at the idea of that.
It's 4
2%. Like, no way, man. Like, they have to get past so many good teams, man. Like, it ain't happening. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I think the 5 out of 5 spice is saying that, like, Fnatic top 4s or, like, any team perceived below them in the tier list. But, yeah, I even think, like, oh, shit. I'm curious, like, how far TL's fundamentals get them, because I do think that TL actually does have really good fundamentals as a team.
Yeah, the mid game's fantastic. Just do they survive to it?
I even really like their early game rotations. Like, this is a team, when they were playing in NA, I was like, don't give them 2 winning side lanes. Like, they'll get the most out of it. I thought Impact abused Udyr's timers to walk mid. His Rumble as well, better than any other top laner in the league. They would also, like, when they have prios in both sides, they would just swap and try and like pick the objectives they play for and try and catch someone off guard, because in a lot of matchups, like Udyr's okay farming in a 1v2, whereas the enemy top laner sometimes was not, and all of a sudden they get an even bigger advantage on the map, right? Where they're swapping with tempo by syncing up the recalls on both sides. This is something that I feel like TL fundamentally does very well. I hope that they can play out their lanes well enough where they can actually demonstrate some of the skills I know they have as a team, right? Because this is a young team and like the laning is super leveled up. So it's almost like how much can they brush up those skills in the boot camp? Because I know from talking with a lot of teams that go international, it's like your first week or 2 of scrims, it's like you just have to completely relearn how to play the game.
Yeah.
Because you get your shit pushed in by like comps and like just timers that you did not know exist in your region, right? So yeah.
All right. Hey, thanks so much, caller, for the take. This was the spicy LCS NA fandom take that I was looking for, so I appreciate you calling in with it. Is there anything that you want to shout out here at the end?
If anyone has any Twitch primes available, please go on to Twitch, give it to Mr. Travis Gafford. Other than that, that's it. Peace.
Wow, that was a great. I loved everything about that shout out. Thank you so much.
You have no vested interest in that at all.
Thank you so much, caller. All right, awesome. That is the show. I'm going to stay on Twitch for a little while to stream a little sponsored stream after this. But I do want to address something actually that happened during the show. So I tweeted out that image of the MSI marketing this year to last year across YouTube. And I had a really great reply from Washed Frank, who's a creative director for Logitech, who sort of challenged a lot of what we were saying earlier. and was saying like, hey, saying this is the only marketing or this is the only thing is maybe unfair because they've pushed a lot of different stuff. The tweets that they have been putting out have gotten a lot of views. Apparently, their Instagram has been pushing a ton. I question the value of their Instagram, but their Instagram Reels are apparently crushing it. 225K on one of these MSI videos. It looks like they're doing more MSI videos over there on Reels to get things pushing and going. So there's definitely been more than what we were led to believe or suggested to believe, I think. So
We just aren't hip with the kids anymore, Travis.
I mean, Instagram's not hip. TikTok is hip until it gets banned. True. But I didn't. Maybe they're promoting.
Hey, I'm on
TikTok
League Talk and I'm not seeing that right now. So
Yeah.
I guess I'm just missing that.
I agree.
Speaking of TikTok, shout out Nymaera. Anything you want to shout out? Do you like that, Travis?
Wait, what?
Wait, me?
You're leading. You're just going to his. Does he? Is there some relevance? Is this a?
Oh no! I
segue?
did a load of TikToks
Yeah,
just
got a
before the new
TikTok.
year, and
Okay.
then the problem is I then found out that doing all your own video editing is a pain in the ass, and I
Yes.
burned out with it. But yeah, I was doing well on
It takes
TikTok
so
for a
much
bit.
time.
Basically,
bad.
all I did was just say some old stories about Faker, which everyone's forgotten by now. Because, tell you
I'm
what,
looking
I
at your
felt old
TikTok
the
right
other
now.
day.
Yeah, you got some
Because
big
I
views.
was in the green room for LPL Desk, and I was with Janero and I was with Trouble, and I was like, oh my god, this guy just Captain Jacked. And they were just gave me blank stares, and I'm like, what's a Captain Jack? And I was like, you don't know about the instant cleanse Captain Jack? I was like, I feel like a lot of these old moves, we remember the insect, just about, we remember that one, but there are so many of these names and things, which I'm like, no one knows this anymore. So I'll probably do some more stories about that on TikTok at some point anyway, but that's a different thing. Yeah. History.
All right. What shoutouts and plugs do you have, Nymaera? What do you want to shout?
Well, I mean, I haven't really figured out what I'm going to be doing in the break right now. Mainly, I'm just taking a proper break, but when I'm back and doing stuff, I stream on my own channel. Nymaera, there's an underscore after it because someone has the Nymaera username, which is annoying on Twitch. But I'll be there. Catch whatever I'm doing on Twitter. I have a Discord as well. I do YouTube stuff occasionally. I will be around, folks. And if you want to hear some more of me, come invite me on shows, I guess. I'll be there. And I'll be playing Mass Effect until then, I guess.
Yes, if you are watching this and you have shows, invite him. Cubby, what do you want to shout out plug?
Shout out to I'm on twitch.tv/CubbyXX because someone took Cubby and someone took CubbyX, so we're there. I'm gonna be doing MSI VOD reviews like 36 hours after the games because I have to wait 24. And also I'm just gonna do them like leading into MSI hopefully for streams. So I'll do that and then post on my YouTube. They're gonna be delayed like 36 to 48 hours, which kind of sucks, but I'm gonna try and grind it out as much as I can. I'm excited to see some of the teams. I was gonna commit to like doing reviews and prep to going in, but kind of like Alex, I took a break and vacation was nice. And honestly, I like looking at the MSI schedule. Yeah, I know it's a sprint, but I'm not intimidated by it because I took a break, and that's rare in esports. But I'm glad I did. So. Besides that, follow me on Twitter, and then shout out to the other podcast, The Jungle. We have a recording on May 6th. Shout out to Medic, who is on the team and will be kicking ass at MSI as always. It's actually a really fun team to work with. They're all you folks, but they're very nice to me. And I get to have Broxa be a resident NA fan as a TL sponsor. So we're 2-2, a little bit even.
Also, shout out to you two as well for having me on. It's been nice chatting with you guys. And it's nice to get involved with.
Thanks for waking up. Yeah,
that's all right. I'm a degenerate demon hours sleeping schedule, but no, it's really nice to kind of get involved with some different kind of talking topics with some different people. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, and I really appreciate having you on because it's just always kind of weird catch 22 where we want to have folks on who have an international perspective. Oftentimes those folks are traveling or doing something else, or they're like, I'm not working the event, so I'm taking time off or doing something else. So just you being down to come on was great, and always great to get good insight. So for me, shout outs, plugs, it will be a bit of a quieter month, I think, for me in terms of content since I'm not there. We will still be doing Hotline Leagues. I'll probably try to put out some MSI content, but I am going to also be trying to take this time to focus on creating some unusual stuff that is more in line with what I was doing towards the beginning of the year. So we'll see what ends up hitting, but I am kind of trying to think like, okay, rather than there's a lot of other people that are going to be doing a lot of coverage of MSI. I want to get some content up on the YouTube channel, but I also want to take the fact that I'm not there to see what else I can do if I have this time. So stay tuned for all of that. As always, if you want to support, you can go to the link tree that's in the description. You can go follow on YouTube or sub on Twitch or become a member on YouTube. That's really great. The other thing is, if you live in Vancouver, Canada, I will be at Command Fest in Vancouver playing Magic with whoever wants to play Magic with me the Friday and Saturday of the May 17th and 18th. I'm flying back so I can watch finals and also celebrate my birthday, but I would love to play Command Fest or Commander and Magic and all that stuff with you at Command Fest Vancouver. My discount code is Travis. If you use that, you save some money when you buy your thing. They're not sponsoring this or anything like that. I like meeting people in person that like to play Magic. So that's it. Thanks everyone. Thanks Nymaera. Thank you Cubby, and thank you to all the callers. We will see you next Monday, right, Cubby?
Yes.
Or actually, I guess I need to look at the schedule. We may shift it if we can finish plans or something like that by doing this on Tuesday or something. We'll figure it out.
There's an off day on the 6th, so I actually think it works out really well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So we'll do Monday. Perfect. Yeah, we'll be Monday. So see you all next Monday. Bye.